The hush of night has gathered around you, like soft wool laid gently across tired shoulders. The fire has dimmed to embers, flickering faintly like forgotten stars beneath a heavy sky, and far above, the moon has risen, round, pale, and watchful, as it once did for the people of the north. Those who believed it was not a cold stone in the sky, but a hunted god fleeing from doom. In the year 872, when the seas still belonged to oars and the hearts of men thudded like drumbeats beneath fur and iron, there was a boy who could not sleep when the moon was full. His name was Einar, and he lived near the edge of a fjord where pine trees leaned into the wind like gossiping old women. His father's house was built of dark timbers and turf thick against the chill, and beside the hearth, wrapped in worn wool, Einar listened to his grandmother's voice, low and raspy like wind over stone, as she told the tale again, the one she was only allowed to whisper when the moon was at its brightest. They called it Mani, the moon, and he was no object or orb, but a being once plucked from the halls of men and cast into the sky. Long ago, she said, the gods had stolen Mani and his sister Sol, the sun, and bound them to the heavens to light the 9 worlds. But the wolves hated the theft. Skuld chased the sun, and Hati the moon, monstrous creatures born from chaos, jaws ever open, fangs gleaming like winter's frost. Each night, Mani fled, and each night, Einar watched the chase. Have you ever felt the thrill of fear while staring at the moon? Wondered what might be chasing it? Einar did. He believed if he blinked, the wolf might catch it. That spring, when the ice receded and the boats groaned as they slid back into water, Einar's uncle returned from a raid. He brought silver and stories, and a talisman hung around his neck. A disc carved from whalebone, etched with the phases of the moon. But there, scratched at the center, was something else. 2 eyes, wide and hollow, and a gaping mouth. Einar stared. That, his uncle said, is what waits when the moon is caught. His voice dropped as the firelight danced on his scarred cheek. At Ragnarok, the final winter, Hati will devour the moon whole, and the sky will go dark. No tides, no seasons, no dreams. Einar did not understand all the words, but he understood the hush that followed. Even the flames seemed to tremble. From that night forward, whenever the moon waxed, he began watching it more closely. He marked its shape with charcoal on the doorframe. He carved little wolves into driftwood and left them on the windowsill, as offerings or warnings, he wasn't sure which. Summer came. The fish were plentiful, the bees thick with gold, and yet the people of the village often glanced skyward, their eyes clouded not with weather, but with thoughts of fate. For in these lands, the cosmos were not distant or indifferent. They were alive, and they were listening. Every 7th night, the seeress came down from the high ridge with her staff of bone and her cloak stitched with feathers. She would sit beneath the hanging moon and read its face like others read runes. Her voice was slow, wet with prophecy. Tonight, she once murmured, Mani slows, the wolf draws near. Einar shivered even in the warmth of late summer. He asked his grandmother why the gods allowed this. Why would they let the wolf catch the moon? Because all must end, she said softly. Even light, even gods. That is the truth of Ragnarok. Not a punishment, but a return. She tapped her finger against her temple. But if you know it's coming, you can prepare. You can meet it with open eyes. That autumn, the nights grew long again. The village held feasts under the flickering stars. Einar, now taller, now old enough to join in the harvest rites, began carving not just wolves, but moons. Crescent, full, dark. He hung them in trees, tucked them into fence posts, laid them in the river reeds. The villagers said little, but they noticed. When the moon turned blood red one night, a rare eclipse, though they did not call it that, panic spread like frost through the fields. Chickens flapped, dogs howled, and old men gripped their axes as though doom had risen from the sea. And in that moment, as the crimson light washed over the fjord, the seeress pointed her staff skyward. "The wolf has tasted it," she whispered. Some wept, others prayed. Einar stared in silence, heart thudding with something he did not yet have words for. That night, he dreamed of snow falling on a field of bones, of the moon, cracked and dark, and of a voice, perhaps his own, perhaps not, saying, "There is still time." In the days that followed, the village prepared offerings, not to appease the gods, but to honor the end that would one day come. They believed that when Ragnarok came, even the moon would be reborn, that it was not the end of all things, but the shedding of old skin. Einar began sleeping under the open sky. Even when the wind bit his cheeks and the frost kissed his hair, he would lie still, wrapped in furs, eyes fixed on the heavens, watching, waiting, wondering what it might feel like when darkness finally swallowed light. Would it be sudden or slow? Would the stars weep? Would anything remain? But most of all, would he remember the shape of the moon? He asked these questions to the silence, and though no answer came, the hush itself felt sacred, as if the sky was listening, as if the moon, hunted and pale, understood. And when the moon next rose, thin and sharp like a sickle, he did not fear. He only whispered, "Run, Mani, run faster." The wind tonight carries with it the scent of wood smoke and salt, and the faintest memory of snow. Somewhere in the distance, a raven caws once, then falls silent. And above, the moon hangs, neither full nor thin, but in between, like a secret half told, or a breath not quite released. Beneath that silver glow, the land remembers, and so do the people. Einar, now on the cusp of manhood, walks the shoreline with bare feet and calloused hands, his breath a soft mist against the dark. The moon's reflection ripples in the sea like a ghost, chased by waves that lap with ancient rhythm. He stops and kneels, dragging a finger through the wet sand, drawing yet another image of the wolf, Hati, with jaws parted wide. He has carved these same teeth 1,000 times by now. On stones, on bone, on the shaft of his walking stick. Each time, the image is a little sharper, a little faster. The villagers no longer ask why. Some leave him be. Others leave offerings beside his work. A sprig of pine, a twist of red thread, a flat stone painted black. It is not fear they offer him, but recognition. There are stories passed in quiet corners, when the fires burn low and the mead has dulled all other concerns. Stories that say those who fixate on Ragnarok too early may become part of its coming. That to dream too long on the end of the world is to draw its breath toward you. But Einar does not fear the end. He does not chase it either. He simply listens for it, like one listening for thunder over a far-off ridge. And the moon, as always, keeps running. Each night, when it rises, he feels its quiet plea. Not a scream, not even a whisper, but something deeper. A call in the bones, a knowing. The moon was not made to be still. It was made to flee. And that fleeing, the endless race, is what keeps the world turning. One evening, after the first snowfall of winter, Einar walks the ridge where the seeress once stood. She is gone now, passed into the realm of the ancestors, buried beneath a cairn of stones shaped like moons. They say she left without a word. Only a bowl of ash and a single raven feather were found in her hut, beside a rune carved into the wall, Dagaz, the rune of awakening. Einar runs his hand along that rune now, his glove worn thin at the fingertips. He wonders if she knew the time was close, if the eclipse had been a warning. The stars above are sharper than usual, like they've been polished, and the moon tonight is sickle thin, barely clinging to the sky. But it's there, still running, still fleeing the wolf. And in that cold, quiet moment, he hears something, not with his ears, but inside. It is the old tale again, but this time it feels different. He sees Mani, silver-skinned and hollow-eyed, running across the vault of night. Behind him, Hati, fur bristling and breath like black smoke, gains ground. Every leap brings the wolf closer. But Mani does not scream. He does not cry out. He only runs, because he knows that if he stops, just once, the world will forget how to move. Have you ever wondered what it would feel like to be chased by something that can never die? To know that your every step delays the darkness, but only just? That you are the last thread holding night together? Einar breathes in the brittle air. The vision fades, but not entirely. It lingers like scent, like touch, like dream. He knows now what the seeress meant when she spoke of remembering the shape of the moon. It was never just the light. It was the movement, the flight, the tension that held it all. That winter grows long and brutal. Ice forms not just on the river, but in the wells. Livestock die. Some children fall ill. The mead runs low. Hope flickers. And yet, the sky continues its pattern. The villagers gather more often now, not to feast, but to sit close and whisper stories. Tales of Fenrir, the great wolf who will break his bonds and bring fire and blood. Tales of the world tree trembling, of stars falling like rain. They do not speak these things to frighten the children, but to prepare them. Because to the Norse, to fear the end is not shameful. To forget it is. One night, a traveling skald comes through, his beard frozen with frost, his harp wrapped in seal hide. He sings a long, slow song beside the hearth, a song of Ragnarok, of gods falling, and brothers slaying brothers, of ships made from dead men's nails, and the sky itself cracking open. But at the end of the song, he smiles softly, as if remembering something sweeter than sorrow. And after, he murmurs, a new sun rises. A girl, daughter of Sol, rides her mother's chariot. The moon returns, bright, unbitten, and a green field blooms where fire once danced. The villagers listen. Some weep, not from fear, from longing. Einar does not weep, but he lies awake long after the skald has gone, thinking of that girl of the sun, of the new moon, whole again. He wonders if Mani will be reborn too, if he will rest at last, or if he will run still. This time, not from death, but towards something new. That spring, the ice melts late. But when it does, the river roars as if rejoicing. Einar, now taller than his father, begins crafting something larger than carved tokens or charms. In the shed beside the goat pen, he shapes a staff from ash wood, not just a walking stick, but something more. Upon its length, he carves the full cycle of the moon, not in straight order, but spiraling upward. At the base, the wolf. At the top, a single rune, Rido, the rune of journey. He carries it with him each night as he walks the village's edge, tracing the ridgeline, touching each boundary stone, offering whispered prayers to the stars. Not to stop the end, but to greet it, because he understands now. The moon is not a god above. It is a promise, a reminder that light returns, that movement matters, that even in the chase there is meaning. And meaning, the old ones say, is the shield against chaos. When the next full moon rises, round and high, unmarred by eclipse, the village holds a fire, not for warmth, for witness. Einar places the staff in the center, leaned against a cairn of carved stone. Around it, others place their offerings, bones, feathers, bread, runes painted on bark. They do not chant, they do not dance. They simply sit and watch. The moon watches back. No wolf this night, or perhaps just for now, it rests. In the stillness, Einar closes his eyes and feels the ground beneath him. Not dead, not frozen, but humming with the slow, patient breath of spring. And in that breath, something moves. Not a word, not a sound, a presence. The chase continues, but not yet. Tonight belongs to the watchers, to the ones who remember, to the ones who know. The moon may be hunted, but it has not yet been caught. The first warm rains have come. You can hear them tapping softly on the thatch roof above. A steady, gentle rhythm, like the heartbeat of the earth, finally waking after the long sleep of winter. Outside, the birch trees glisten, and pale green shoots peek from the wet soil. The scent of damp moss clings to the air, rich and old. And above it all, veiled lightly in clouds, the moon stirs. It is spring again, and the world is turning once more. Einar walks along the edge of the woods, his boots slick with mud, the ashwood staff steady in his hand. The carved spirals feel smooth beneath his fingers now, worn from his touch and the weight of nights spent staring upward. The moon has changed again, grown smaller, fading toward the new. Yet he no longer fears this darkness. He has come to see it as a breath being held, a pause, not the end. It is the village that has changed. Some call Einar moon-marked now. Others say he walks with one foot in Midgard and the other in dreams. The old women ask him to bless their homes when their children fall ill. The fishermen bring him strange shells found in the shallows, ones that shimmer faintly, like pale silver eyes. And though Einar still works the fields and cuts firewood like the rest, he is no longer quite like them. The skalds tell stories of Odin's eye, of Thor's hammer, of Loki's tricks. But Einar watches the sky, not the gods. He listens to the stars, and he listens to the moon. One night, while walking alone along the fjord's edge, he comes upon something unusual. A drift of bones scattered across the stones, not fish nor bird, larger. He kneels, brushing the cold rocks with care. A stag, perhaps, or a dog. Its skull is cracked. The jaw lies apart. But what captures him is not the death. It is what rests atop the bones. A charm, a thin disk of polished amber, etched with a single rune. Algiz, the rune of protection. He takes it, hesitating only a moment, and presses it into the soft leather cord around his neck. Later, when he speaks with the blacksmith, the man frowns. That belonged to the woman from the western hills, the one who dreamed in fire and never burned. She vanished last year. People say she walked into the snow and never returned. Einar says nothing. He only nods and walks home under the new moon's shadow. The sky is darker than usual, no light above. The stars seem farther away. And yet, He feels no fear. He lies beneath the empty sky that night, as he always does, wrapped in fur, the earth cool beneath him, and slowly, ever so slowly, he begins to hum a low, rhythmic tune, not of words, but of movement, a sound the moon might make as it sails through time. In the hush that follows, he remembers a story the seeress once told. Before her voice grew too thin to speak, she said the moon remembers every name whispered to it. She said that when Hati finally catches it and the sky goes black, the moon will spill those names like seeds, and from each will grow a new world. Einar had not understood then, but he does now, because the moon is not a god, it is memory. The rains grow heavier as spring deepens. The river floods its banks. The sheep bleat in anxious clusters. And in the sky, strange signs appear, not omens, not curses, but patterns. Birds flying at odd angles, red clouds at dusk, and once a great ring around the moon, bright and wide, stretching like a halo across the black sky. The villagers grow wary. The older ones begin speaking in half sentences. The children are kept indoors after sundown. They do not say the word Ragnarok, but they think it. And Einar, he dreams it. In his sleep, he walks across ash fields. The sky above him churns with smoke, but the moon, full and white, rides above it all, chased still, never caught. And in that dream, he is not afraid. He follows the moon. He walks toward the end, not away from it, and wakes with frost on his lashes. In midsummer, when the days stretch long and dusk clings late into night, Einar begins a journey. Not far, not heroic, just a walk beyond the hills, where the forest grows dense and forgotten, and old stones rise from the earth like buried teeth. He does not tell anyone where he goes. He follows deer paths and cold brooks, eats from his satchel, drinks from rain pools. At last, he finds the clearing he dreamed of, ringed in stone, quiet as the inside of a thought. There, he sets down his staff and lies in the grass. The moon rises late, small and low, but it's enough. He lights no fire. He needs none. The moonlight is pale and clean, and the wind brings with it only one sound, distant and low, like breath through reeds. And then, a whisper, not in language, but in knowing. He sees a child being born under the stars. He sees an old woman whispering into a bowl of mead. He sees ships burning on icy waves. He sees the world tree groaning as serpents stir at its roots. And always, always, the moon running ahead, silver heels flashing, never resting. Einar weeps, not in sorrow, in understanding, because it has never been about fear. It has always been about remembering. He rises, trembling, and carves into the largest stone a mark, Berkana, the rune of rebirth. He places the charm he found, the amber disc, into the hollow at the stone's base, and turns homeward. The village is quiet when he returns. They say a red moon rose while he was gone, blood bright and full. They say the wolves howled without breath, and the dogs hid under the longhouse eaves. But nothing happened. No stars fell. No giants came. And yet, something feels different, as though the land has exhaled. Einar begins carving again. Not wolves now, nor moons. He carves spirals, endless, slow curves, in wood, in clay, in bread. People smile, though they do not know why. The old ones say, "We have been remembered," and the young ones say, "We are being watched." but no one fears. Because the moon has not fled, it is still there, still running, still singing. And so is the world. That winter, Einar speaks less. He watches more. The moon grows heavy with snowlight. The stars blink slower. And one night, when the sky is quiet and the fire low, he turns to his brother, now with 2 children of his own, and asks softly, "Have you ever wondered what the moon thinks of us?" His brother laughs. "No," he says. "Should I?" Einar does not answer. He only smiles, because he knows. The moon does not judge. It remembers. Every prayer, every cry, every name whispered into night. And when the time comes, when the last breath is drawn and the last fire fades, the moon will be there, not as an end, but as a door, a path, a memory, waiting to be followed home. Tonight, the stillness wraps the world like velvet. The coals in the hearth have dimmed, but not died. The trees beyond the longhouse creak gently in the hush, their branches heavy with frost. Somewhere an owl calls once, low and distant. And above, in the canopy of stars, the moon holds steady, as if listening. And perhaps it is. For this is the night the moon paused. It came without warning. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the western ridge and shadows stretched long across the fjord, the people of the village turned their eyes upward and waited for the silver glow that always followed. But the sky remained dark, not clouded, not stormed, merely blank. No money, no runner in the heavens. And though the stars shimmered in their usual patterns, the familiar silver shape was nowhere to be seen. At first, they said nothing, saying, "Just a mice." Einar stood near the shore, his breath curling like thread in the cold air. His fingers tightened on the ashwood staff, and though his heart thumped harder than usual, he did not panic. Instead, he closed his eyes and listened, because in the old stories, it was said the moon would one day falter, when Hati gained too much ground, when fate itself took a breath. The moment just before Ragnarok began. But there were other stories too, ones the seeress had whispered only once, when her voice was thin as smoke and her eyes filmed with sleep. She had spoken of the held breath, the sacred stillness, when the world, for a moment, stopped chasing and being chased, a single pause in the eternal dance, to forget, to remember, to choose. Einar opened his eyes. The night did not feel wrong. It felt waiting. In the days that followed, no moon appeared. The tides were strange, not violent, but confused. The sheep refused to settle. The dogs sniffed the wind with pricked ears and low growls. And yet, no disaster came. No stars fell. No flames rose. The village held fast, gathering each night by the fire, watching the sky, sharing bread and questions. And through it all, Einar watched more closely than ever, not for the wolf, but for the silence. He sat beside the river and placed stones in the water, circles within circles. He carved new runes on the threshold of his home, softer ones, Laguz for water, Sa for stillness, Ehwaz for trust. And he spoke to the darkness, not in words, but in breath. Because if the moon was listening, he wanted it to hear that the world had not forgotten, that it was okay to rest, that it was okay to pause. On the 7th night without the moon, the oldest man in the village died. He had been quiet for weeks, wrapped in wool, bones thin as twigs, eyes brighter than ever. When he passed, they laid him on a sled of fir branches and carried him to the ridge, where the trees grew in a crooked circle and the moss held the warmth of centuries. Einar went with them, and as they placed the old man's body into the cairn, Einar looked up. Still no moon, but the stars were sharp, impossibly clear, and one of them blinked. He blinked back. That night, in a dream, he walked beside a woman with silver hair. Her cloak shimmered with starlight, and her hands were bare despite the cold. She said no name, asked no question, only pointed, and he followed. They crossed a plain of frost and stone. They passed trees with golden bark and wells that hummed with voices from beneath. And then they came to a place where time had folded, where the moon lay, curled like a child in a bed of snow. Its light was faint, its breath shallow, but it was alive. Einar knelt beside it and whispered, "You are not lost. You are not late. You are only resting." The moon did not open its eyes, but it exhaled. He awoke with tears frozen on his cheeks. The next night, he climbed the ridge alone, took no food, no tools, only his staff. And there, beneath the open sky, he waited. No chance, no fire, just silence and breath. And when at last he stood, hours later, with the frost crusting his cloak, and the world hushed so fully even the wind dared not move, he saw it, a glow, not bright, not sharp, but returning. A sliver, a breath, a promise. The moon had risen again, thin as a hair, but there, and in its pale return, the wolves did not howl, the dogs did not bark. Only the ravens flew in circles overhead, croaking their strange songs to no one in particular, as if laughing at a joke that hadn't yet been told. Einar smiled, not in triumph, but in relief. He turned to walk down the ridge, back to the village, back to warmth, back to bread and firelight and faces. The moon would not be caught tonight, not yet. They said afterward that it was a sign, that the world had paused for them, or that something had been remembered, a name, a song, a grief. No one agreed on what it meant, but no one forgot. Children began painting moons on the beams above their beds. Old women braided moon charms into their hair. Even the warriors, hardened and rough from years at sea, carried pale stones in their pouches, polished round and kissed with soot. Quiet reminders that even gods can falter and still return. Einar aged slowly. He did not leave the village often. He taught no formal lessons. But people came, from hills and coasts and forests. They came with questions about time, about tides, about why the moon runs. He did not give them answers, only stories, and sometimes silence, because some things are not meant to be taught, only carried. On the eve of his final winter, when his beard was long and his limbs no longer quick, he walked the shore one last time. The moon was full above him, round and whole. He watched it and whispered, "Still running, still remembering, still lighting the path." And then he sat, closed his eyes, and exhaled. The villagers found him the next morning. They did not weep. They built a cairn by the water, carved spirals into the stones, and when the moon rose again that night, it did so brighter than it had in years, as if it, too, was remembering him. The frost tonight is quiet, fine as sugar, drifting across the roof like the hush of ancient footsteps. The hearth glows low, warm but reserved, as though it too listens for something beyond the edge of thought. And above, unblinking and whole, the moon casts its silver net across the land. A net not to trap, but to catch what the living forget. Old songs, unfinished dreams, names once spoken, and then lost to time. The village has changed, though the mountains have not. Years have passed. The children who once played near the fjord are now parents themselves, and the fields once tilled by Einar's hands are sown by others, though his staff still rests beside the old door, kept like an heirloom, its spiraling runes darkened by oil and age. They still speak his name, not every day, not in loud voices, but in the way of people who remember with the backs of their minds and the corners of their hearts. There are those who say he never truly died, that he simply walked farther than the edge of the village, walked into the moonlight itself, and that when it is very quiet, on nights when the snow hangs still in the air and the stars seem to press a little closer, you can hear him walking just beyond the trees, not lost, not gone, just listening. There is a girl now. Her name is Sigrun, daughter of one of Einar's nieces, and she watches the sky the way he once did, not out of fear or superstition, but with quiet curiosity. Her eyes are pale, her fingers thin. She speaks little, but she carves moons into bark and watches how shadows fall across water. Her mother tells her stories at bedtime, stories of Odin, of Thor, of the end of all things. But it is the story of the moon she asks to hear again and again. Tell me about the wolf, she says. Tell me why he runs. And when her mother finishes the tale, voice low and steady, Sigrun always asks the same thing. But what happens if the wolf gives up? The answer is never the same, because no one knows. But Sigrun thinks she might. One day, while gathering kindling near the stone cairns, Sigrun finds something beneath the snow. A ring of bones, old and bleached, shaped like a spiral. At the center, a stone etched with runes too worn to read. She touches it and feels a faint warmth. She does not run. Instead, she kneels and begins to whisper. No words, just sound. The way you hum to a sleeping child, the way you might speak to the moon. That night, a strange dream finds her. She is walking across a sea of mist. There are no stars, no sky, just light, soft, silver, and endless. And in that mist, she hears footsteps, not behind her, beside her. She turns. A man walks there, tall, robed in fur, a staff in one hand. His face is blurred, but his presence is familiar, like an old blanket or the smell of baking bread. He does not speak, but he points, and Sigrun follows. They pass through a grove of trees that shine with frost but burn with color, reds and greens and golds, as though autumn had fallen in love with winter. They come to a pool of water, so still it reflects not the sky, but memory, and in it she sees the story again. The moon, the wolf, the chase. But this time, something is different. The wolf slows, the moon does not flee. And in that stillness, something happens, not an ending, not a death, but a change. The wolf stops and sits. The moon lowers itself, and the two touch noses. And then the world spins anew, not broken, not burned, but turned, like a page. And Sigrun wakes with tears on her cheeks and a rune glowing faintly in her palm. Kanaz, the torch, the opening, the spark of insight. She speaks of the dream to no one, not yet. Instead, she begins carving again. But now, her moons are different. Some are broken, some are whole. Some have wolves curled beside them, asleep. And slowly, the village notices. The elders nod, not quite understanding, but sensing something old in her gaze. The mothers ask her to bless their thresholds, and the children begin to follow her into the fields, asking, "What do you see?" And she tells them, "I see what's not yet happened. I see the silence between howls. I see the moon resting. The winters come and go. The sea freezes and thaws. And the moon continues its cycle, never faltering, never late. But every now and then, just as it crests, full and bright, a haze rolls in across the hills. Not cloud, not fog, but memory. And those who look closely say they see shapes in that silver light. A boy with a staff, a girl with a glowing palm, a wolf curled beside a pool, and a world not ending, but beginning again. In time, Sigrun becomes the village's new seeress. She does not dress in feathers or carry bones. She wears simple wool. She walks with bare feet. And when she speaks, it is rarely prophecy. More often, questions. Have you watched how snow falls on an unlit roof? Have you noticed how the wind sometimes changes its tune, even when no trees move? Have you wondered what the moon remembers? And the people begin to ask those questions too, not because they expect answers, but because the asking feels holy. One night, when she is older, her hair streaked with frost, and her eyes lined with years, she walks alone to the edge of the ridge. The moon is full above her, whole and unafraid. She smiles and sits, wrapping her cloak tightly, and begins to hum. The tune is not one anyone taught her, but it feels known, ancient, safe. And as she hums, the wind slows, the branches hush, and even the stars seem to blink less. And somewhere, far beyond the ridge, beyond the mountains, beyond time, the moon hears her and remembers, not the chase, not the wolf, but the rest, the pause, the breath, the place where endings bend into beginnings and stories spiral instead of break. And in that moment, the moon does not run. It drifts, slow, graceful. And the wolf? The wolf sleeps. Below, in the village, a child stirs in sleep and opens their eyes. They do not cry. They only look at the ceiling, where a small charm hangs, carved of ash wood, etched with spirals. And when the moonlight catches it, it turns slowly, casting soft shadows like waves on a calm sea. The child watches and smiles and drifts back into sleep. As above, the moon watches back. The fire has died down, leaving only a hush of embers, their glow faint as fireflies trapped beneath stone. Outside, the wind has softened. Even the trees seem to lean inward, as though listening for something faint, a distant breath, a half-remembered song. The moon floats high now, veiled by a thin skein of cloud, like a shy memory peeking through sleep. Not fleeing, not watching, only being. And in this quiet place, where even the owls hold their wings still, the old story continues. It begins again in frost. But not the cruel kind. This frost is gentle, more like lace spun from the sky than knives from winter. It clings to the tips of branches and coats the stones by the riverbank, turning everything silver. The villagers call it moon breath when it comes like this, silent, soft, as though the moon has sighed during sleep. Sigrun walks barefoot across it, not far, just to the edge of the trees, where the pines begin to gather and the soil still remembers Einar's footsteps. She does this each month, always on the third night after the new moon. The sky is still dark then, but not empty, full of what has not yet come. She carries no torch. She does not need one, because what she seeks is not light. It is listening. She sits on a fallen log, wraps her cloak tighter, and looks not at the sky, but at the darkness between the stars. "Tell me," she whispers, not expecting an answer. "Do you still run?" The moon, of course, does not reply, but the air shifts, not wind, not voice, something subtler, something like a presence. She closes her eyes and remembers the dream. The wolf and the moon meeting, not in violence, but in stillness. The silence between howls. She had once believed that silence was the end, but now she knows it differently. It is not the end. It is the breath drawn before the final verse, the space between drum beats, the moment before the seed cracks open. And in that silence, she has learned to wait. That winter, strange signs begin again. Not dangerous, just unusual. The sea ice forms in spiral patterns near the shore. The birds forget their usual flight lines. A newborn calf is born with a perfect circle on its brow. The people notice. They do not panic. But they look more often to Sigrun now, as they once did to Einar. One night, as the sky turns dark and brittle, a young man approaches her near the hearth. He is strong, broad-shouldered, with soot still smudging his fingers from the forge. He kneels awkwardly, looking at the floor. "Lady Sigrun," he says, voice uncertain. "I dream of the wolf." She waits. He swallows. In the dream, it stands still, not chasing, just watching me. And I feel I should run, but I don't. I bow. She smiles and says only, "That is not fear. That is reverence." The boy nods, almost in relief. He does not understand the meaning fully, but the weight lifts, and he leaves with a quieter step. There are more dreams, more visitors. A girl from the coast brings her mother's cloak, embroidered with moons, and asks Sigrun to bless it. A fisherman swears the waves chanted runes beneath his boat, and the blacksmith claims that on the coldest morning, the anvil rang out a single note, clear, sharp, and sweet, though he had struck no blow. Sigrun listens. To each one, she gives no prophecy, only questions. What did it feel like? What did it leave behind? What part of you did it touch? They return home changed, not certain, but softened, like stone worn smooth by river water. On the first night of the wolf moon, the deepest full moon of winter, the village gathers on the ridge. It is a tradition now, though none recall who began it. Perhaps Einar, perhaps someone older. It no longer matters. They bring no banners, no weapons, only candles. Each family lights one, small flames cupped in hollowed turnips or bowls of snow-packed clay. They line the path to the standing stones, their soft glow echoing the stars above. Sigrun walks last. At the center of the stones, she kneels and presses her hand to the earth. And for a moment, the wind stops entirely. The flames do not flicker. Even the animals fall still. And then, in that breathless hush, the moon appears from behind a cloud. Full, clear, silent, and they all see it. The faint curve of a second shape beside it. Not a wolf. Not quite. More like a shadow with memory. A presence. And none are afraid. They only bow their heads and feel something old and enormous pass over them, like the wind of a god's breath or the wing beat of time itself. The next day, the river ice cracks early. The trees begin to bud too soon, and an owl is found resting on the thatch of the longhouse, staring at the horizon for hours before flying into the daylight. The elders murmur, but Sigrun is calm. She kneels by the owl's perch and leaves it a sprig of yarrow and a bowl of snow. "Watch well," she says, then turns away. That spring, the village gives birth to twins under a new moon. Both are healthy. One is quiet. One cries like thunder. They are named Mani and Hati, not to tempt fate, but to honor it. The seasons move. The moon continues. Not always on time, not always in shape. Sometimes she is late. Sometimes she appears early. Sometimes she is hidden for days. But now, the people no longer fear those changes. They simply pause and ask, what are we being shown? What have we forgotten? What must we carry forward? Because they understand now, as Einar did and as Sigrun does, that the moon does not promise peace or certainty. She offers something stranger and kinder: rhythm, pattern, return. And if we follow, even into the shadows, we may remember what the end truly is. Not a wall, but a doorway, a spiral, a breath, waiting to begin again. The night is windless, still, so still, you could hear the sigh of a sleeping bird or the drop of melted frost from a pine needle above the thatched eaves. The smoke rising from the hearth drifts upward in a perfect column, as if unwilling to disturb the peace. And above it all, the sky holds its breath again. The moon is not yet risen, but she will be, and tonight she might be listening more closely than ever. Sigrun sits alone beneath the birch tree at the edge of the ridge. The bark is pale in the starlight, almost like bone, and the roots stretch like fingers into the cold moss below. She has not spoken all day, not out of sorrow, but preparation. She is waiting. The moon is late, not missing, not gone, just slow. And when it finally rises, low over the horizon, it does not shine with its usual brightness. It glows a deep bronze, tinged with the faintest red. Not a warning, but a remembering. A color old as firelight and blood. The villagers whisper of omens and stories long buried. But Sigrun knows it is only the earth, stepping briefly between the sun and its sister. The eclipse. The breath in the song. The blink of the eye. The stillness between thoughts. She watches without blinking. And as the shadow deepens over the moon's face, she feels something stir deep within her chest. Not fear, recognition. Long ago, so long that none but the stones recall it, the people believed the moon was a wheel, a disk carved from divine silver, turned by invisible hands across the heavens. But others, like the ones who lived before even Odin raised his spear, believed differently. They believed the moon had eyes, eyes that could see back, that watched, that waited, that remembered. Sigrun closes her own eyes and lets her thoughts drift with the darkness. Around her, the forest hums low. The animals are quiet. The river has stopped singing. She lets herself fall into the hush. And there, just beyond the veil of sleep, something meets her gaze. Not a vision, not a dream, a presence. It does not speak, but it knows, and it shows her. A hall of bone beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, where memories are stored like seeds in dry earth. She sees the wolf, Hati, not as a beast of rage, but of sorrow. Running not to destroy, but to catch something before it breaks. She sees the moon, not fleeing in fear, but racing with purpose. Not prey, but guide. Drawing the wolf, pulling it toward a final meeting not of teeth, but of truth. And she sees Einar, young and old at once, walking among the spirals, leaving soft footprints that glow long after he passes. And she sees herself, not standing still, but becoming part of the rhythm, not chosen, not cursed, just woven in, as all things are. When she opens her eyes again, the eclipse is over. The moon shines full once more, brighter now, steady. The owl calls twice from the pine above, and Sigrun smiles. because she understands. The chase is not to end something, it is to keep the world alive. The next day, she gathers the village, not for warning, not for prophecy, but to share what has been whispered to her in the moonlight. She speaks simply. There will be a day, she says, when the wolf stops running. The people murmur, but not in rage and not in blood. He will stop because the moon has stopped too. And in that pause, the world will turn inside out, not with fire, but with memory. She points to the horizon, where the silver glow lingers still. The end is not a fall. It is a folding, a spiral, the same song sung in a new key. They do not all understand, but they feel the truth in her voice, and that is enough. That night, a new custom begins. Each person takes a small object, a carved rune, a braided cord, a smooth river stone, and places it in the clearing beneath the birch. Not as sacrifice, as reminder. To the moon, to themselves, to time. That all things return. The moons that follow are steady again. No red, no shadow. But each seems a little clearer, as though they carry more than light. As though they now reflect the dreams of the living. Or perhaps the dreams of the moon herself. And Sigrun begins writing. Not words, not sagas, but spirals, drawn into snow, pressed into bread dough, stitched into cloaks and carved into breadboards. Spirals upon spirals, because nothing ends. Not truly, not even stories. They turn, like wheels, like moons, like breath. Years pass. Children become hunters. Hunters become elders. Elders return to the earth. And still, the moon comes, and still they remember. The village grows, but slowly. There are new fires, new hands, new songs, but the old ones are never forgotten. At the edge of the field, the cairn that marks Einar's resting place still stands, now surrounded by others. And beside it, Sigrun's staff, not buried, but planted, its spiral head blooming with lichen and moss. Some say that on clear nights, you can see light swirling just beneath its surface. Some say it listens still. On a midsummer night, under a sky thick with stars and warm with wind, the villagers gather once more. Not in fear, not in reverence, in joy. Children run with charms around their necks, little moons made of shell and silver. The old men sit quietly, sharing memories that no longer belong to only one lifetime. And at the heart of the circle, the youngest child, born just weeks ago, sleeps with eyes open, staring up at the moon as though recognizing an old friend. And the moon looks back, full, calm, content, not chased, not fleeing, simply present. And if you listen closely, you might hear it hum, a sound older than wolves, older than gods, older even than the frost. The sound of something that was never meant to end, only turn. The snow has melted. The stream sings again. Birds nest beneath the eaves of the longhouse, and the wind carries the faint scent of green things unfurling. Moss, pine tips, wild thyme. The moon rises later now, softer in the sky, like a familiar face aging into gentleness. And in the village, a story has begun to spread, not told in shouts or sagas, but in murmurs exchanged between fires, between hands kneading dough, between pauses in the day's work. They say the wolf has stopped chasing, but not because he caught the moon, because he chose to walk beside it. It began on a night that was not remarkable. No eclipse, no blood in the sky, no strange wind or broken patterns, just a simple night. The moon was half full. The stars flickered as they always did, and yet, as the villagers went about their rituals, lighting the hearths, wrapping children in blankets, offering small thanks to the sky, something in the air felt different, a softness, a stillness, as if the land itself had taken a breath and was waiting to exhale. That night, the boy named Hati, now a youth with hands strong from lifting nets and shoulders wide from splitting logs, left his house and walked up the ridge. He had been named for the wolf, but never feared him. The name had become his own, worn down by years like a river stone in a pocket. He did not think much of the tales, though he listened to them. But on that night, something pulled him from his bed. Not fear, not voice, a pull. He wrapped his cloak and followed the path Einar had once walked. The ridge was quiet. A thin mist clung to the ground, curling around his boots like smoke, and when he reached the standing stones, he found her. Sigrun. Much older now, her hair entirely white, her eyes pale as moonstone. She stood barefoot in the grass, as she always had, her cloak fluttering like the wings of an owl. "You came," she said. "I didn't know why," he replied. She only smiled. Sometimes the soul moves before the mind catches up. Then she turned her face toward the sky, and Hati did the same. The moon had risen, but not alone. A shape moved beside it, faint at first, as if made of cloud or thought, but gradually becoming clearer. A great shape, long-limbed, low-bodied, eyes glowing faintly. It was the wolf, but not as the tales had painted him, not wild or slavering, not mouth agape in pursuit. He moved with the moon, stride for stride, not behind, not ahead, beside. The two stood beneath the sky in silence. Sigrun whispered, more to the wind than to the boy. "The story has turned." Hati blinked. "Is it Ragnarok?" She shook her head. "No. This is what happens when the tale is heard in full, not just the fear, but the flight, not just the chase, but the choice." And in that moment, he understood, not with thought, but with something deeper. Like the way your hands know how to tie rope, even when your eyes are closed. The wolf had never been a destroyer. He had been a mirror. Chasing the moon was not vengeance. It was longing, a longing to be close to what slips away. All stories, when they are told too quickly, become warnings. But when they are told slowly, with pauses and silences and space to breathe, they become truths. And the truth was this: the moon had not been running in terror. She had been leading. And the wolf, feared by all, had only ever wanted to keep up. That spring, the villagers began walking differently. Not hurried, not cautious. More like dancers who had just remembered the steps. Children drew wolves in the dirt, not with fangs, but with eyes. Women spun charms in the shape of two circles, side by side, not one behind the other. And the skalds, oh the skalds, they began to change their songs. Now they told of a time when the end did not fall in flame, but folded into a new rhythm. A moon and a wolf, side by side, walking the edge of night. The beginning of the second turning. Sigrun, in her last season of life, called the people together one final time. She stood beneath the moon, which was full again, bright, kind, familiar. Her voice, though old, carried like a hush over still water. "We were never meant to outrun endings," she said. "We were meant to walk beside them." And then she placed her staff, the same ash wood spiraled with moons and runes, into the earth. Not vertically, but laid flat, as a bridge, as a path, as a gesture. and the people wept, not from grief, but because they knew she had said something they would carry for 100 winters more. She passed the next morning, in her sleep. No pain, no cold, just breath leaving, as gently as the moon sets beyond the horizon. They buried her beside Einar, and beside her they placed not only the staff, but the drawing of a wolf and a moon walking side by side, painted by a child, carved into driftwood, set between their cairns, so that even stone would remember. The years moved on, as they always do. Storms came, fields bloomed and withered, new voices rose, but the path remained. And on clear nights, when the moon shone strong and steady, the people gathered, not to fear, not to prophesy, but to sing. Slow songs, spiral songs, songs with long silences between the notes. And sometimes the wolves came too, not near the fire, but close enough, watching, listening, remembering, as if they too understood now that the end was not the goal, but the rhythm, the turning. The story told slowly over generations, until even the stars could hum along. And on those nights, when the fire crackled just so, and the moon cast twin shadows beside every body, one human, one not, the people would say, "Tonight, the wolf walks beside us," and they would smile. Because they knew the tale was still unfolding. Because they knew the moon would keep returning. And because they no longer ran from the wolf in the dark. They walked with him. They always had. The village lies still tonight, like a sleeping animal curled beneath woolen clouds. The wind is soft and slow, passing gently through the trees like a hand through hair. A small flame dances in a clay lamp on the windowsill of the old longhouse, and the light flickers in rhythm with the pulse of the moonlight pouring in through the open doorway. It is the kind of night where time folds in on itself, where past and present press close together, like hands meeting in the dark. And above, the moon watches, full, steady, unmoving, yet not distant, never distant, because it is not the kind of moon that rules from afar. It is the kind of moon that remembers. The boy called Bjorn stirs beneath his blankets, eyes wide, though he is not afraid. He has seen 7 winters, and already he asks questions that the grown ones find difficult. Why does the moon never fall? He had asked once. Because it has a path, they told him. But who gave it the path? He'd pressed. They had no answer then, only smiles. But tonight, as the fire dims and the coals whisper their last heat into the air, Bjorn hears something beyond the quiet. Not a sound, but a sense, a pull. So he rises, slips from his bed, wraps himself in his little cloak, and steps out into the cold. He walks the well-worn trail to the ridge, where the birch tree still leans slightly east, and the ground remembers many footsteps. The stones are cold beneath his feet, but he does not flinch. The air smells of moss and smoke, and something older, something like snow that never melts. He does not expect to find anyone there, but someone is waiting. She is old, older than his mother, older even than the skalds who sit near the fire, muttering runes into their mugs. Her eyes are the color of twilight, and her voice is no louder than the wind. She says, "You've come to remember." He blinks, "But I'm too young to remember." She smiles, not unkindly. "Your bones are older than you know." Then she gestures to the sky, and together they watch the moon rise. It comes slow and golden, lifting itself above the ridge with patience. As it climbs higher, its color changes, from gold to silver to white blue. And as it shines, The old woman speaks. Once, the moon ran from the wolf. Bjorn nods. He has heard the tale, but that was only the surface of the story, she says. Only the part told to children, so they wouldn't fear the dark. He looks up at her. What was the real story? She is quiet for a long time. Then she says, the wolf wasn't trying to catch the moon. He was trying not to lose her. Bjorn frowns. But the moon was running away. No, she says, she was leading. And he followed, because he didn't want the sky to go quiet, not forever. The boy tilts his head. Is that why the moon makes that sound? She turns to him, surprised. What sound? He shrugs, like when it's really quiet and the stars don't move. There's a hum. I thought it was the moon. She is silent again, but her eyes glisten. You've heard the memory, she says. Not everyone does. Below the ridge, in the village, the people sleep. Dreams of wheat fields, quiet lakes, newborn goats. Simple things. Good things. But on the ridge, something ancient stirs. Not danger, not doom. Just something old waking up. Because the moon is not only a light, it is a page. And tonight, it writes again. Bjorn and the old woman sit in silence. He notices now that she has a stone in her hand, small, round, worn smooth by water. She runs her thumb over it as she speaks again. Each time the moon turns full, it remembers something, not just for itself, for all of us. He squints. What kind of things? She looks to the sky. The way a mother held her son when the cold came early. The way someone whispered a name to a dying flame. The last breath of a seeress who saw beyond endings. Why does the moon remember those? He asks. Because we forget, she says. And forgetting is a kind of death. He is quiet for a long while. Then, will it remember me? Her hand reaches out and rests lightly on his. It already has. The wind shifts. A faint howl drifts across the trees. Not close, not threatening. Just a call, a greeting. And far above, the moon seems to pulse. Bjorn feels it in his chest. A warmth that doesn't come from fire. It comes from knowing. From being known. In the morning, the old woman is gone. No footsteps lead away. No marks in the dew. Just the smooth stone she'd held, resting where she'd sat. Bjorn picks it up. It's still warm, and etched faintly with a spiral. The years pass, Bjorn grows. He works the land, learns to mend nets, carves wood with patient hands. But each month, on the third night after the new moon, he walks to the ridge. He sits beneath a birch and listens, not just for the wind, not just for the wolf, but for the sound only he knows, the hum between the stars, the breath of the moon, the memory, and sometimes, when the night is clear and the flame in the village hearth dances just so, he hears the old woman's voice again, faint and kind. The wolf walks beside her now, and he smiles, because he understands. The wolf was never meant to win, and the moon was never meant to flee. They were always meant to move together. Not as enemies, but as rhythm, as promise, as two halves of the same breath. Now, when the children ask why the moon never falls, he tells them softly, because we are still telling the story. And when they ask why the wolf still follows, he says, because we still forget. Then he shows them the stone and teaches them how to listen to the quiet, to the dark, to the memory written in moonlight. A hush hangs over the village like the breath before a song. It is neither night nor day, but that deep silver moment in between, when the sky blushes with violet and the wind turns colder just for a breath. Somewhere, a dog whines in its sleep. Somewhere else, a raven stirs, unsettled. The fire has not yet been lit, and the moon is still hidden, waiting behind the shoulder of the hill. But something is waking, and tonight it will not be a tale remembered. It will be a tale happening. Bjorn stands near the shore. He is older now, full grown, with a beard the color of wet pine bark and hands as steady as stone. Yet he still carries the spiral stone, smoothed by years of touch, nestled always in the pocket of his wool tunic. It is his map when dreams grow unclear, his anchor when the tide of forgetting pulls too strong. And tonight, the tide is rising. The waters of the fjord are too still. The air tastes like copper and snow. The sky holds back, as if afraid to blink. He knows this feeling. He has felt it once before, as a boy on the ridge, when the old woman had spoken of memory and silence and the wolf who longed not to devour, but to draw close. Tonight feels like that night, but deeper, as though something beneath the skin of the world is shifting. The children gather near the longhouse. They are restless, not playful, not loud, but fidgeting, watching the adults from the corners of their eyes. One child holds a carved wooden moon. Another wears a charm made from ash wood and copper thread. None speak. They know. They do not know what, but they know. Bjorn nods to them. He says nothing, but he begins to walk, and they follow. They cross the frost-bitten fields. They climb the old ridge, boots crunching against dry moss and thin ice. The spiral path is still there, faint but sure, and when they reach the top, they find that others have already come. The old ones, the quiet ones, those who still remember the night the wolf walked beside the moon, and those who never saw it, but believe the story anyway. Together, they wait. The moon rises late, slower than usual, thicker, somehow, like it carries weight. She climbs the dark sky with effort, her glow gold at first, then white, then blue. She casts shadows sharper than usual, shadows that stretch longer than they should, shadows that seem to curl toward the center of the clearing where the people now sit, all of them silent. And then, the sound begins. It is not music, not in the way a harp makes music. It is older, lower, like stone cracking open beneath roots, like water finding a hidden path, like breath. The sound does not come from above. It comes from within the people, within the ground, within the very bones of the air. Some close their eyes. Some grip the earth. Others weep, though they do not know why. Bjorn feels it in his chest, behind his ribs, in the shape of his heartbeat, a rhythm he has always known, but never heard aloud. The moon is singing. The sound grows, not louder, wider. It stretches across the fjord, into the hills, into the woods beyond. Even the wolves fall still. The birds do not flee. The world listens. And in the sound, in the folding melody of light and silence, the people begin to see. Not with their eyes, with something older. They see the old seeress, Sigrun, walking through mist. They see Einar, carving spirals in driftwood beside the fire. They see the child named Mani, born under the dark moon, now a man who sails by stars rather than maps. They see the wolf, no longer chasing, but standing beside the moon, eyes wide and calm. They see themselves, not as they are, but as they have been, as they will be. Carriers of rhythm, vessels of breath, walkers between the beats. The moon sings of all this, not with words, with memory, with warmth, with something that moves through marrow and time. And when the song fades, slowly As mist returns to sea, the silence that follows is not empty. It is whole. Bjorn breathes. He does not speak. No one does. But when the moon reaches her highest point, round and clear and full of secrets, he stands and takes the spiral stone from his pocket. He walks to the center of the ring of people, and he places the stone on the ground, not buried, not offered, just placed, as a note placed in a song's final chord. Then he steps back, and the wind picks up. It is a soft wind, carrying the smell of snowmelt, pine, and ash. It lifts the children's hair. It rustles the cloaks of the elders, and it carries something unseen across their skin. A word, perhaps, or a name, or a memory. The people do not try to name it. They simply close their eyes and let it pass. Later, after the moon dips behind the hill again, the people return to the village. But something follows them. Not a spirit, not a shadow, a rhythm, an understanding. That week, the tides shift. The whales move closer to the shore than usual. The sky seems a little clearer, the dreams a little softer. People speak more gently. They listen more slowly. And in the evenings, before sleep, the children now ask their parents, "Can you hear the moon?" And the parents say, "Only if we are very quiet. Only if we are remembering." And Bjorn, older now, with gray at his temples and a softness in his voice, sometimes walks the ridge alone. He does not always wait for the moon. Sometimes he walks just to listen. To the wind, to the stones, to the song still spinning in the soil, because he knows the truth now. The song was never just for one night. It never ended. It is still being sung. Each time a wolf pauses. Each time a moon rises slow and full. Each time someone forgets, then remembers again. Each time a spiral is drawn in dirt by a small, curious hand. The song continues, soft, patient, endless, and listening. The snow has returned, not in anger, but in silence. It floats gently over the rooftops and gathers along the paths like wool dropped by invisible hands. Smoke curls softly from the chimneys of the longhouses, and every window glows like a lantern adrift on dark waters. Far above, the sky stretches wide and quiet, the stars blinking slow, as if nodding off into some deeper stillness. And there, in the middle of it all, the moon hangs once again, round, calm, luminous. She makes no sound tonight. She does not need to, because now the people understand her silences just as well as her songs. Bjorn sits near the fire, his hands wrapped around a cup of hot broth. The children are gathered at his feet, legs tucked beneath blankets, eyes wide with waiting. They no longer ask for sagas of gods or tales of dragons. Tonight, as on so many nights, they ask for something quieter. "Tell us the story of the night the moon remembered us," says one child. Bjorn smiles softly. He does not ask what they mean. He knows. He begins not with words, but with a breath, long, slow, steady, like the wind that rises through the trees just before a snowfall. The children lean closer, listening not just with ears, but with hearts. And then he speaks. "In the long ago," he says, "the moon ran from the wolf. Or so we thought. We told the story that way for many winters, that the moon was hunted, that the wolf was cruel, that the end would come when the chase ended." The children nod. They know this part. "But there was more," he says, "much more." He turns slightly toward the hearth, and the flames cast spirals on the beams above. "One night, he continues. The wolf stopped, and the moon did too, not because they were tired, but because they had finally heard each other. He lowers his voice to a whisper, and what they heard was us. There is silence in the longhouse, the kind that is sacred, the kind that holds breath instead of taking it. And in that quiet, Bjorn reaches into the pocket of his tunic and draws out the old stone, the one the woman gave him long ago, warm and etched with the spiral of time. He holds it in the firelight, and the room feels older, wider, deeper. Everything we've ever whispered to the sky, Bjorn says, every prayer, every grief, every name we've cried out into the dark, the moon has carried them. He looks at the children, one by one, and on the night she sang, she gave them back. A small girl with braided hair blinks. But what did the wolf do? Bjorn smiles. He listened. He sat beside her and listened, because for the first time, he realized she wasn't running away. She was guiding him, says another child softly. Bjorn nods. And what happens now? A boy asks. Bjorn places the spiral stone back in his pocket and leans back with a soft sigh. Now, the story keeps turning. Slowly, gently, like the moon across the sky. Outside, the snow continues to fall. But it is not cold. It is quiet. A thick, warm quiet that drapes itself across the roofs and fields and ridges like a blessing. And high above, the moon watches. Her light touches the stones of the ridge, the roots of the birch, the weathered staff of Sigrun, still planted where memory is strongest, and she remembers. In the seasons that follow, the villagers begin a new practice. They call it moonwriting. On the night of each full moon, they gather not to speak, but to write, not with ink or stone, but with intention. Each person chooses something small, a curl of bark, a smooth pebble, a twist of wool, and presses into it a thought, a hope, a question, a farewell. Then, at moonrise, they walk to the old spiral path. They leave the items somewhere along the stones, and they walk away without looking back. They do not speak of what they leave, but the path becomes full. The spirals grow thick with quiet offerings, and the moon, above, carries them all. She does not need to answer. She only needs to remember. Bjorn ages slowly. His hair turns white. His back bends. But he still walks the ridge, each full moon, always with the same soft rhythm in his steps, as though following music that others cannot hear. And sometimes, when the sky is especially clear, and the moon seems especially full, people say they see something beside him. A large shape, dark, four-legged. Not behind, not ahead. Beside. On one such night, a young woman named Thyra follows Bjorn up the ridge. She walks quietly, carries no torch, just her breath and her question. When she reaches him, he does not turn. He only says, "You've brought something." She nods and holds out a small clay disc, not more than a thumb's width, carved with her mother's name. Bjorn takes it gently and places it on the path. "Do you want to forget?" he asks. "No," she says. "I want to carry it without pain." He nods, and together they stand. The moon rises. The wolf stands beside it, and the clay disc glows faintly in the pale light. Thyra walks back alone, lighter, not empty, but light. And as she turns once to glance behind her, she sees that Bjorn is no longer alone on the ridge. There are many figures now, faint, gentle, some old, some young, some human, some not, all standing in silence, watching the moon, as though guarding it. or perhaps being guarded by it. The years continue their slow, spiraling turn. Bjorn passes one spring in his sleep. There is no fear, no warning, only a breath that leaves and does not return. They bury him near the ridge, beside Sigrun and Einar, beneath the birch, whose roots now wrap around memories like the rings of a tree. And on his cairn, someone places a stone. The same spiral, the same warmth, the same promise. Now, it is Thyra who carries the rhythm. She does not call herself a seeress. She does not speak with prophecy or riddles. She simply listens and walks and remembers. One night, years later, a child asks her, "Is the moon a god?" She kneels, places her hand over the child's heart, and says, "No, she is a mirror." "A mirror of what?" the child asks. Thyra smiles. "Of what we choose to carry and what we choose to let go." Outside, the moonlight falls across the path of offerings. It kisses the charm left by a grieving father. It caresses the braid of wool from a daughter who grew into a mother. It rests on the staff, now cracked and moss-covered, but still upright. And in that light, all things are remembered. Not judged, not weighed, just remembered. Because some stories do not need an ending. They only need to be carried, like breath, like music, like moonlight falling on snow. The frost has returned, but the village no longer calls it cruel. It comes not as punishment, but as rhythm, the great pulse of the world folding inward for a season. Smoke rises again from chimneys, and boots line the thresholds, crusted with the fine silver of the forest paths. Inside, the fire crackles low, casting long shadows that flicker and stretch, as if trying to remember what it once meant to be flames dancing under stars. The moon is not yet visible tonight. She is late, but no one worries. They know she will come, and even if she doesn't, she still listens. Thyra sits alone now, not because she must, but because this part of the song needs solitude. It is the winter solstice, the longest night, and the birch tree on the ridge groans faintly under the weight of snow and time. Its roots grow wide now, twisting in a silent embrace around the three cairns of Einar, Sigrun, and Bjorn. Each of them remembered, each of them quiet, and beside the tree, just as it always has, the staff still stands, its spiral top now etched deeper by wind, ice, and reverent hands. Thyra kneels before it, her cloak wrapped tightly, her hair streaked with gray, though her eyes remain young. She places her palm against the old wood and closes her eyes. She does not speak. She does not ask. She simply listens. And deep in the soil, beneath the snow, beneath the roots, beneath the memory, something stirs. She does not see a vision, not like Sigrun once did. She does not hear a song, not like the children on the night the moon sang. But what she receives is something different. A stillness, a place, a glimpse of the moon beneath, not in the sky, but in the earth. Folded within the stones, like a pearl inside an old shell. Round, silent, breathing, waiting. She opens her eyes slowly. The wind has stopped. The trees do not creak. Even the fire in the village has quieted, as though the whole world has leaned in. She whispers, "You are not lost." And the soil exhales steam. She returns to the village with snow in her hair and silence on her lips. But the people do not question. They have learned that not all knowing comes with words. Sometimes it arrives like frost on a window, quietly, patiently, asking only to be seen. In the days that follow, strange dreams begin to ripple through the village. The fishers dream of caves lit by moonlight without openings. The mothers dream of unborn children who glow in the womb like lanterns. The children dream of walking through tunnels where the walls are covered in carvings they've never seen before. Spirals, wolves, moons, hands. One boy wakes crying, not from fear, but from beauty. He says, "She was there, the moon, but not above. She was under my feet." Thyra gathers the village in the longhouse. It is rare for them to meet in the daylight, rarer still in the depth of winter. But the sun has not risen truly for days, only a pale smudge on the horizon. The fire burns high. She stands before them with calm in her posture and quiet in her voice. "I believe," she says, "the moon has a twin." There is silence. The elders lean forward. "Not another light in the sky," she says, "but something beneath. A second heart, a second memory. Not chasing, not fleeing, only holding." A murmur. "Buried deep," she says, sees, "not hidden, guarded." She looks at them all, her gaze steady. And I believe it's time we remember that part of her. No one speaks against her. No one mocks. No one fears. They only nod, because something in their bones already knew. They prepare not with shovels, not with maps. They prepare with breath, with patience, with stillness. They do not seek to uncover. They seek to honor. And so a new path begins. One by one, each villager begins bringing something small, not for burning, not for leaving behind, but for planting. Rocks carved with names, wood chips carved with spirals, ash from old fires, wool from children's first tunics, even teeth from old ones who had passed, gifted by kin. All these they bury near the base of the birch tree. They do not dig. They place them in the snow, in the soil, in the moss. And the earth receives them like gifts it had once given, and now gently takes back. The moon watches from above, but the earth, the moon's mirror, begins to hum. The dreams grow stronger, more vivid. People speak of seeing paths made of silver roots stretching beneath the land, of feeling the rhythm of footsteps not yet taken, of voices in the stones saying only one thing over and over: remember, downward. On the last night of the longest month, Thyra walks the path alone. The village is asleep, or perhaps not. Perhaps they are waiting. She kneels once more before the old staff, the spiral now covered with thin frost, and this time she speaks. Not a question, not a request, only one word: now. The ground does not shake. The sky does not change, but the snow melts in a perfect circle around her knees, and from the earth rises a glow, pale as the moon, gentle as breath. It is not light, it is memory. She sees. The night Einar lay in frost, watching the sky with open eyes. The moment Sigrun first heard the moon's pause in her bones, the first howl of the child named Hati echoing across the fjord. The wolf, not as beast, but as companion. The moon, not as flame, but as mirror, and herself, not old, not young, walking between above and below, carrying not fire, not prophecy, but continuity. She weeps, quietly, not from sadness, from reverence. When she returns to the village, the people are waiting. They do not ask. They see it in her eyes. that the moon is not one thing, not a god, not a guide, not a memory. She is all those, but she is also a door, and beneath her, the earth remembers too. From that day forward, the villagers speak of two moons, one that guides them through the dark sky and one that guards them from beneath their feet. They begin drawing twin spirals, one upward, one downward, on the door frames of their homes. They place stones in their boots before long journeys so that the earth can listen to each step. They name their children for silence, for roots, for winter light. And in the ridge, beneath the birch, the spiral offerings grow. But never cluttered, never crowded, only deepened. Like song layered on song, like breath inside breath. The moon continues to rise, but sometimes she lingers behind a cloud, and the people do not worry, because now they know. Even when she cannot be seen above, she is still below. She is still within, and she is still singing, softly, spiraling, forever. The frost this morning does not bite. It kisses. It touches the lips of the well and the edges of the windows with the gentlest white, then melts into the grain of the wood as the sun, faint and golden, rises through the hush. The smoke from the longhouse chimneys rises slowly, curling like stories retold to the wind. The moon has already set, but her memory still lingers in the snow's soft sheen, in the way the pines lean slightly east, as if bowing towards something unseen. And deep beneath the earth, beneath the birch, beneath the cairns and offerings and soil dreams of generations, the second moon rests, not sleeping, not hidden, simply waiting. In the village, a new generation has begun to carve. Their hands are small, but certain. Their knives are sharp. On driftwood and antler, they do not etch the usual runes of protection or harvest. They carve two figures, the moon and the wolf, side by side. Not in pursuit, not in struggle. Walking together, each in their own rhythm, bound by something older than chase. They do not remember the days when the wolf was feared, because they were born in the days of walking. Thyra still watches the ridge. She walks slower now, but her steps are sure. Her staff is simpler than the one once planted beside the birch. It is made from rowan, smooth and dark, and it bears only one marking, a downward spiral that ends in a circle. She does not climb every full moon anymore. Her body no longer wants to fight the cold winds, and the snow is deeper now, but her eyes are as sharp as ever. And when the children ask her to tell the story again, she never refuses. Tonight, they've come early. 4 of them, all under 10 winters, carrying bundles of dry grass and short wooden flutes. They sit beside her hearth, cheeks pink from wind, and wait with their little feet tucked under fox fur cloaks. Is it true the wolf once ate the moon? One of them asks. Thyra smiles softly, her eyes flicking toward the smoke hole overhead where a patch of sky waits, faint blue, streaked with clouds. Some stories said so, she replies, but those were stories told when people didn't yet know how to listen. The children are quiet. Then what was the wolf doing? A girl asks. Thyra takes a long breath. The air smells of ash and pine resin. He was waiting, she says. Waiting? The youngest boy repeats, frowning. For what? For her to stop running, Thyra replies. The fire cracks, and for a moment the room fills with a scent of cedar and warmth. She begins the story, as she always does now, not with a grand beginning, but with a sound. She hums, low, round, spiraled. It is not a melody, not a song. It is more like breath with weight. The children, close their eyes without being told. She tells them of the first waiting, of how the moon paused one winter night, not because she had been caught, but because she had grown tired of being misunderstood. She tells them how the wolf slowed, not because he failed, but because he finally listened to the silence, and how, in that pause, something new was born. Not a star, not a god, but a rhythm, a way. She tells them the wolf never truly ran again after that night. He walked, he waited, he watched. He followed not out of hunger, but in trust. She finishes with a whisper. He follows her still, but not because he needs to, because he chooses to, just as she chooses to lead. The children do not speak at first. One of them reaches into their pocket and draws out a small charm. 2 circles, one dark, one light, tied with sinew. He places it in Thyra's lap. For the second moon, he says. Thyra's hands tremble slightly as she closes them over the charm. Thank you, she murmurs. That night, the moon rises slow and wide. Thyra does not climb the ridge. She watches from her doorway, wrapped in blankets. And down the path, at the edge of the forest, she sees something. A shadow. 4-legged. Still. Watching. She does not blink. She does not look away, and neither does it. In that long moment, time folds. She remembers Einar, staring upward with the certainty of one who sees patterns others miss. She remembers Sigrun, whispering to the wind and hearing it whisper back. She remembers Bjorn, placing his stone and carrying silence without sorrow. She remembers herself, kneeling at the base of the birch and feeling the glow of something buried, something vast. And now, she remembers the wolf, not as a symbol, not as an ending, but as a companion, a part of the cycle, the dark spiral that balances the light, the space between breath. The shadow lifts its head, the moon brightens, and then the wolf turns and walks into the trees, not away, not disappearing, just moving onward. And Thyra smiles, because she knows he will return. In the months that follow, more villagers begin to walk alone at night, not for fear, for listening. Some return with stories, a glowing mark on a tree, a circle of snow unmelted in spring, the sound of paws in the dark, steady and calm, a hum in the earth that matches their heartbeat. They do not say these things with urgency. They say them as offerings, quietly, gently, as if the stories themselves are sacred. New spirals appear near the birch, not carved by hands, but shaped by time, by moss, by snow melt, by wind. One spiral turns inward, as if marking where the second moon sleeps. Another turns outward, as if reminding all who walk the path to carry her story into the world. The skalds begin singing a new refrain in their long tales. It is not always translated the same way, but the words echo. The wolf no longer hungers. The moon no longer hides. And the end no longer ends. And in the heart of the longhouse, on the night of the frost's first kiss, Thyra dreams one last dream. She stands beneath the earth, not in a cave, but in a chamber of light. All around her, the stone glows faintly, like moonlight filtered through memory. And there, curled in a great circle, rests the wolf. His fur is silver, his breath slow. He opens one eye, and she places her hand on his shoulder. He does not move. He does not vanish. They remain there, still, together, the keeper of endings and the witness of their turning. She wakes with tears on her cheeks and peace in her chest. That morning, as the first snow falls in long, lazy spirals, she leaves her house, walks to the birch, and places the charm the child had given her beneath the roots. Then she returns to her bed and sleeps. She does not wake again, but no one mourns with despair. They gather quietly and sing, not the songs of endings, but of waiting, of walking, of watching. And that night, the moon rises slower than usual, its light thick with memory, and beside it, for the first time in many seasons, they see the shape of the wolf again, not far behind, not ahead, side by side. And all through the village, people look up and whisper, "She is not alone." And neither are we. The snow has deepened. It lies in soft folds across rooftops, over benches, inside the ridges of old footprints like memory nestling into bone. The wind has changed its voice again. No longer the whistling call of high winter, but a hush, a secret. It carries pine scent, smoke, and something older still, the quiet hum of return. There are no torches lit tonight along the ridge, no drums, no horns. And yet, the entire village is awake, because the moon is rising. And this time, they all know something has begun. Thyra's cairn rests beneath the birch, where three others stand beside her. Four now, arranged in a slow arc, each marked by a different kind of spiral. Einar's is cut into stone, weathered and shallow. Sigrun's is carved into birch bark and pinned beneath quartz. Bjorn's is made of river pebbles set in a coil that tightens as it nears the center. And Thyra's, her spiral, was not made by hand at all. It appeared slowly, in the moss, in the roots, a swirl of lichen and soft earth, outlined by the tips of new shoots, green even under the snow. Some say the earth wrote it, others say the moon did, but no one touches it. They only kneel beside it when they pass. Tonight, all have come, not out of custom, out of recognition. There is no leader now, no seeress, no skald to stand before the crowd and chant the old words. The rhythm has moved beyond that. It no longer needs to be carried by a single voice. It lives now in the quiet woven between many. They gather not to perform, but to witness. And as the moon crests the ridge, fuller than full, rounder than should be possible, they all exhale as one. Not in awe, in agreement. The sky tonight is silvered with the kind of clarity that makes even old things sharp again. The stars blink slowly, and a faint shimmer moves in the air. Not snow, not mist, but something between. Something like memory trying to take shape. And then, the ground begins to glow. It begins at the base of the birch, where the spiral moss holds its color even beneath the frost. The roots pulse faintly, then slowly, as though stretching after a long sleep, light begins to move outward. Not fire, not flame, but soft, steady luminescence, like moonlight filtered through water. It spreads through the soil, out beneath the standing stones, curling under the feet of the gathered people like a tide moving inward. No one flinches. They open their hands. Some close their eyes. Others begin to hum, not to summon, to accompany. The light continues to grow, and with it, something else. A vibration, low, bone deep, the kind that reminds the body of what it was before it was shaped. And then, not above, but from within the earth, a sound emerges. Not like the song the moon once sang from the sky. This is a lower song, a root song. It moves through soil, stone, marrow. It has no words, and yet it speaks. I remember. The children are the first to kneel, then the elders, then everyone. One by one, they press their palms to the soil, and from the ridge to the hearths below, to the far edge of the fjord, a single, unbroken spiral of light now coils outward from the birch. Not just a symbol, a signal. The memory beneath has awakened, and it is not separate from the moon. It is her echo, her twin, her other shape. Not a second moon in the sky, but the same moon, remembered differently. Above, she guides. Below, she holds. No one speaks. Not until the shim fades, slowly, like a tide pulling back into itself, and the light, having touched all things, begins to sink again into the soil. But something remains. In its place, small threads of green appear. Not grass, not moss. Tiny silver shoots, like blades of moonlight made physical. Some curl, some spiral. Some bend toward the cairns, others toward the sea. That night, no one sleeps. Not from fear, from fullness. And when morning finally comes, soft and gray, with frost clinging to the window corners, they do not speak of omens. They speak of root light, of the moon that grows beneath, of the spiral that is now twofold, skyward and soil-bound. In the days that follow, things begin to change, but not suddenly, not loudly, gently. The bread rises better, even when the wind howls. The fish swim in patterns never seen before, not in haste, but in rhythm. The babies born that season do not cry when first touched by snow. Instead, they blink, they listen, and one by one, they all seem to hum in sleep. The villagers begin a new practice. They take their offerings, stones, runes, shells, bits of story, and plant them in the soil now, rather than laying them on top. They press them beneath the roots of trees, into riverbanks, along the ridge path. They whisper to them, not farewells, but beginnings. And the soil answers, not with words, with warmth, with growth, with memory. One morning, a child named Elin finds something behind the longhouse. She runs her hand through the snow and uncovers a coil of ice, frozen, perfect, shaped like the spiral of the moon. Beneath it, she finds a small root, silver, cool to the touch. It pulses faintly in her palm. She does not keep it. She places it back in the soil. And the next day, a flower blooms there. Tiny, round, pale as starlight. She does not name it. No one does. Some things are not meant to be called, only kept. As seasons pass, people from other villages begin to come. They walk the spiral path. They place stones in the earth. They press their foreheads to the soil, and they, too, begin to remember. Some return home and dig a small circle near their hearth. Others build shrines of moss and silence. All begin to hum, the same hum, the one that began the night the moon grew roots. One night, during the thaw, a woman named Isla dreams of the wolf again, but not running, not watching. He is lying beneath the earth, curled like a seed in winter. His breath matches the rhythm of the tide, and beside him, not the moon above, but the moon below, smaller, closer, woven into the roots like light in a tapestry. He opens his eyes. He sees her, and without speaking, she knows what he means. It is not the end you must remember. It is the turn. She wakes and weeps. not from fear, from knowing. That spring, they carve a new spiral, not on wood, not on stone, on water. They place tiny wooden discs etched with two spirals into the stream, and they watch them drift, spinning as they go toward the fjord. Each turn a breath, each breath a name, each name a memory, floating back to the sea that first carried the sky. The moon rises each night, sometimes late, sometimes bright, sometimes hidden, but always felt, always known, always mirrored beneath. And the people begin to say, softly as they fall asleep, she is not above or below. She is both. She is the turning. She is the hum. The mist returned that evening, not cold, not heavy, just thick enough to soften the sharp edges of the barns and trees, as though the world had drawn a curtain between thought and memory. The lamps burned lower, not from wind, but out of reverence. Dogs did not bark. The wind did not whine in the chimney. And from every house, people stepped quietly onto the earth, with bare feet and breath held between their teeth. Because something was coming. But not from above, from within. There had been no warning, no vision, no voice, no signs in the sky, only a feeling. A hush that started in the root of the village and spread outward, into tools dropped mid-task, into looms left half-threaded, into bowls of soup gone cool and untouched. People looked up from their labor, then looked down. Because it wasn't their eyes that knew something had changed. It was their feet. Their feet could feel it, a rhythm, a pull, a spiral unfolding beneath their soles. Children were the first to speak. It's tonight, said one girl, no more than 5 winters old. What is, her mother whispered, as if afraid to break something. The walking. By twilight, the entire village stood outside, gathered not in one place, but scattered, on porches, near fences, by the stream's edge. They did not need to form a circle this time. The circle was already beneath them. And then the mist moved. It didn't rise or fall. It shifted. It curled in places where there was no wind. It leaned along the ridge paths, and slowly, gently, it parted. And she was there. Not the moon above, not her light, her presence. She was walking, no taller than a woman, no brighter than starlight. She moved slowly, barefoot, her long hair drifting behind her like tideweed in calm water. Her dress was spun from night, stitched with faint spirals of memory, not embroidered, but alive, pulsing slowly like breath. She said nothing. And yet, every person heard her, not in words, in remembering. She walked between them, not blessing, not judging, only noticing. She paused to touch a low-hanging pine branch. She leaned for a moment near a child's toy left in the snow, a carved wolf and a small round moon on a string. She reached down to place her hand on the soil where time would bloom again in spring, and with every step, the mist followed, trailing like breath drawn from old lungs. No one moved to greet her. No one dared. They simply watched, eyes wide, hearts quiet. She did not glow. She did not vanish. She simply was, here, among them. The same moon that ran in stories, that sang above the ridge, that grew roots beneath the cairns, now walked between them, one slow footstep at a time. When she passed Thyra's old house, a wind stirred, the first breath of the night. It circled the doorway, lifted a thread of old cloth from the beam, then moved on. As if remembering the way she once stood, in silence, listening for the wolf's breath in the snow. And the moon paused, for just a moment. Her head turned slightly, eyes closed. Then she walked on. By the time she reached the path that led up the ridge, the mist had turned silver, not glowing, reflecting. What it reflected, no one could say, but all agreed afterward that it had not shown their faces. It had shown their memory, their shape beneath the shape, the part of them the moon knew best. She climbed slowly. The ridge, steep even in daylight, rose before her without resistance, and though the snow lay heavy there, her feet left no prints, only warmth, as if the earth welcomed her without needing proof. At the top, the birch tree waited, taller now, its roots like thick ropes gripping the world. The four cairns stood quiet as always, but the soil around them pulsed faintly, like embers waiting for breath. The moon approached. She knelt. She placed her hand on the spiral that had bloomed from Thyra's grave, and for the first time since she appeared, she spoke. No one heard the words, not as sound, but all felt them, like breath against the back of the neck, like the deep hum of drums too distant to name, like the wind through the wheat in dreams. And what she said was this: I am not only the light that returns, I am the memory you planted when you thought no one was watching. She touched the earth once more, then stood and turned her eyes to the village below, to the fields where spring would come again, to the river that carried spiral charms to the sea, to the stones carved by children, to the stories etched in bread, in bark, in bone. She looked at all of it. Then she looked above, not to the sky, but to the other moon, her reflection, her path, still circling, still spiraling, still remembering. And for one breath, one full, still breath, both moons aligned, the one above, the one below, the one who moved through memory, and the one who watched it take root. The people gasped, not in fear, but in awe. Their hearts beat slower, their breath drew deeper, and the hum that rose from the soil was not from one place. It came from everywhere, from cairns, from boots, from spoons left on thresholds, from scars, from lullabies, from tears never cried, from questions never asked, from everything that had been carried quietly, and everything that had been let go. The moon began to walk again, down the ridge, past the stones, through the spirals, toward the fjord. She reached the edge of the water and stepped in, not as a ghost, not as a goddess, as presence. The water did not ripple. It welcomed. And as she sank slowly beneath the surface, the mist thickened once more, until she was gone. When it cleared, the people were still there, the village unchanged, the snow untouched, but something in their chests had shifted, softened, grown, as if a second heartbeat had joined their first, as if a root had taken hold in their bones, not heavy, not binding, just steady. In the years that followed, they stopped telling the old story of the chase. It wasn't forbidden. It simply no longer felt true. They told the story of the walking now, of the night she came and looked at each of them and said nothing, but remembered everything. And they remembered too. The cairns on the ridge are now surrounded by more spirals than anyone can count. Some made of flowers, others of stones, some appear overnight. Others are built slowly, year after year, by hands that never stop humming. And the birch tree leans slightly east still, not because of wind, but because it remembers the way she passed beneath its branches. No one speaks of the next time. They do not ask when she will come again, because they know now. She is not gone. She never left. She does not wait to be seen. She only waits to be felt. And sometimes, when you press your hand to the earth, you feel her walking. Still. The snow melted early that year, not with violence, but as if it had heard a soft call from the deep ground below and answered by loosening, sinking, vanishing. Grass returned in pale patches. Streams unclenched their frozen jaws and gurgled like children, rediscovering their voices. Birds sang songs that felt older than the trees they nested in. And beneath it all, beneath boot, beneath frost, beneath footstep, something ancient stirred. The people of the village had no word for it, but they felt it. The sky had forgotten, and the soil remembered. It began with a sky gone quiet, not starless. The stars were still there, bright as fish under clear ice, but absent in feeling. The moon, too, stopped rising for 3 nights in a row. This had happened before, in the old stories. And so, no one panicked. They watched, waited, planted spirals in the dark. But on the 4th night, something stranger unfolded. Not in the heavens, in the soil. A young boy named Leif, no older than 10 winters, woke in the deep night to find his pillow wet with tears. He had not been crying. The tears had come from a dream he could not name. He stood, pulled on his boots, and walked to the ridge without telling anyone. What he found was not the birch, not the cairns, but the earth itself, softly glowing, faintly pulsing, as if taking long, slow breaths. The mist that had once followed the moon now hovered low over the ground like a blanket, covering not just roots and moss, but memory. Leif knelt. He placed his hand on the soil, and without meaning to, he spoke. I remember. Others found their way there that night, not in groups, not in pairs. One by one, they arrived, called not by voice, but by rhythm. A pull in the belly, a whisper behind the ribs. They did not speak to one another. They only stood, or knelt, or lay on the moss and listened. And the ground hummed softly back. In the morning, the mist had vanished, but the hum remained. In the days that followed, the sky remained strangely hollow. The wind blew as it always had. The clouds came and went. But the stars, the moon, they did not return. And yet, no one feared, because now they understood. The sky had not abandoned them. It had simply fallen quiet, as if listening, as if learning, because the sky, too, forgets. But the soil always remembers. They began to move differently, not because anyone told them to, but because the ground beneath their feet now felt sacred. Not holy in the way of gods and temples, holy in the way a mother's hands are, worn, strong, ever giving. When they walked softly. When they cooked, they offered a spoonful to the earth before tasting it themselves. When they told stories, they whispered the endings into the soil, and the soil listened. The moon did not return the following month, nor the month after. Still, the tide came in. The roots grew deep. Babies were born. Bread rose. Wolves passed through the valley without taking a single goat. And the people began to understand something new. The moon had moved into them. At first, it was only the children who spoke of it. They said the moon was in their bones now, in their breath, that they could feel her moving just under the skin when they ran or danced or sat still too long. Then the elders spoke of dreams where they coughed and silver light came out, of water tasting faintly like memory, of bread that glowed faintly before being broken. One night, a woman named Anja, a baker who had never left the village, who had spoken little but always listened, stood before the longhouse and declared, "She is not in the sky anymore. She has chosen to root." Then she walked to the cairns, placed her flour-dusted hands on the soil, and lay down. She did not rise again. But in the morning, where she had rested, a perfect spiral of wild thyme had sprouted overnight. The people did not cry. They gathered, they hummed, and they tasted her bread one last time, the last she had baked the day before, each loaf still warm, though the oven had gone cold. From that day forward, the villagers stopped looking up when they missed her. They looked down. They planted more spirals. They began whispering their secrets to the fields, not the stars. And the earth, in turn, answered with gentler winters, with roots that tangled less cruelly in the potatoes, with mushrooms that grew in the shapes of dreams, and always, always, with the hum. The skalds began singing a new refrain. She walks beneath us now. She listens from below. The moon has grown hands of soil, and we grow in her shadow. The change did not stop with the land. The people changed too, not in their shape, in their rhythm. They moved slower, laughed deeper, breathed more evenly. Arguments ended with silence, not shouting. Meals stretched longer, even when the food was simple. People stopped measuring time by days and moons. They measured by memory. Do you remember when the ice melted early? Do you remember the night the mist sang through the floorboards? Do you remember when we stopped waiting for the sky to return and started listening to our feet? And then, one night, just as the fire in the longhouse had turned to red ash and the youngest child had closed her eyes mid-lullaby, something changed again. The earth stopped humming, only for a moment, a long moment, long enough that people stirred in their sleep, long enough for the wind to hesitate outside the door. And then, a bell. Not one they had made, not of iron or brass. It rang from nowhere, from below, from within, just once, clear, pure, sharp, and then silence, followed by light, not from the sky, from the cairns, from the birch, from the soil. It began as a glow and became a warmth, not hot, not bright, but undeniable, like the first breath of spring inside your chest. And then the hum returned, but different, louder, fuller, as though the moon had not disappeared, but deepened, had not left them, but rooted herself so completely into their world that her silence had become their voice. And when the villagers rose and stood barefoot on the soil, they all heard it at once, not through ears, but through ribs. She had not forgotten them. She had not stopped rising. She had simply chosen to rise from beneath. And then, on the seventh night of that season, the moon returned to the sky, smaller than before, a sliver, but enough. She did not rise high. She hovered low over the hills, like a friend leaning in to listen, and the people did not cheer. They bowed. They placed their palms on the soil, and they hummed, not as a greeting, but as a reply, because now they knew. When the sky forgets, the soil remembers. And when we are quiet enough, we remember too. There are days in the north when time forgets to move, days when the mist clings to the pines like memory reluctant to let go, and even the birds fall quiet, their wings folding with more reverence than purpose. On such a morning, the village woke not with noise or urgency, but with the shared feeling that something inside the world had turned. not broken, not fallen, simply turned. As one turns a cup before pouring, as one turns a thought before speaking, as one turns a memory before burying it. No one said it aloud, but they all knew. Today, the spiral had turned inward. The moon still hung in the sky, small and crescent-shaped, pale as a breath against early dawn. She had returned now, but changed. Not merely a face in the heavens. She was more than that, and less than that, present in two places, and maybe three, above, below, and within. Children still pointed to her shape through the thin clouds, but now they also looked at their hands after touching water. They looked into the rings of chopped wood. They traced circles in the ashes of the hearth. They paused before stepping into snow, because they knew, truly now, that she was no longer simply to be watched. She was to be felt. The people had no word for the change, but they marked it anyway. They laid down their tools early. They drew spirals with their fingers, in flour, in soil, in steam on windows. They hummed. The same low rhythm that had once come only on special nights now moved freely from their bodies. In whispers, in breathing, in footsteps on packed earth. The skalds didn't sing. They sat in silence. The elders didn't instruct. They planted beans in a ring, and no one asked why. They simply followed the turning. In the center of the village, near the well, there had always been a stone, round, flat, gray, unremarkable. It had been there since before memory, used as a bench, a table, a place to sharpen knives or sit in the sun. But on that day, someone noticed the first groove. A spiral, shallow and thin, had appeared on its surface. Not carved, not scratched, revealed, and not all at once. It deepened, hour by hour, slow as root growth, sure as breath. By midday, it was clear. The stone remembered something too. That evening, as the sun sank low and the sky turned the color of wet embers, the villagers gathered without speaking. They sat in a wide arc around the spiral stone, letting it glow in the fading light. Then, one by one, they rose. Each person approached it. Each person placed something at its center. A flake of dried fish, a braid of hair from a newborn, a stone etched with the rune for silence, a scrap of leather soaked in salt, a handful of snow already melting. No one asked permission. No one instructed. It simply happened. And then, when the sky turned black and the moon curved just above the ridge like a closed eye, a single child stepped forward. Her name was Ilsa. She had never spoken a full sentence in her 7 winters. But now, she stood beside the stone and said, in a voice as steady as sleep, "She is no longer walking." The adults stirred. "She is sitting," Ilsa continued, "beneath the ground, her hand pressed to her chest, and also in here." No one asked how she knew. They only listened. That night, the people dreamed, each in their own bed, under wool and bark, warmed by coals and breath. But their dreams were shared, not identical, but harmonized. Each saw a spiral, not turning upward, not reaching outward, but folding inward, not collapsing, concentrating. Each felt the soil press not down, but around, a warm closeness, a dark clarity, a center, and in the center, something pulsed, not a word, not a name, a rhythm, thumb, 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 the same rhythm that had once hummed through the ridge path, that had once risen from the cairns, that had once followed the moon through her long silence. Now it beat within them. When they woke, they spoke little. But when they worked the fields, their hands moved in arcs, not lines. When they baked, they shaped the loaves into curves, not rectangles. When they built fences, they wove them in coils, not corners. And when they sang, the old verses faded. New ones came. No one knew where from, but everyone knew how to sing them. One evening, an old man named Torin, who had once feared death more than storms, walked to the birch on the ridge. He carried nothing but a small bowl, filled with black river stones. When he reached the cairns, he knelt, tipped the bowl, and let the stones fall in a spiral around his feet. Then he whispered, "I am not afraid to lie down now." And he did, not to die, but to rest, to join. In the spring, they found that the paths between houses had begun to bend, not by design. The ground had shifted, the trails had curled, subtly, gently. They no longer led in straight lines. They flowed like rivers. They spiraled like thoughts. And when the people walked them, they slowed, not out of effort, but because it felt better that way, as though each step was a page in a long, slow book, as though each turn brought them closer to something they already knew. No one rushed anymore. There was still urgency. Babies came. Storms threatened. Goats escaped. But even in haste, the people carried a different stillness inside them. The kind that comes when you know you are not walking alone. The kind that comes when the path is not just outside you, but within. Years passed. The moon waxed and waned. The soil breathed and swallowed. Children were born with dreams already whispering in their ears. And every so often, someone would return from the ridge and say, "I heard her breathing." And everyone would nod, because they had heard it too, or they would, soon. Now, when strangers came from far coasts or frostbitten villages, seeking shelter or stories, the people offered no long explanations. They gave them a spiral-shaped bowl of broth, a seat beside the fire, and a place to lie down with their ear to the earth. And almost always, by morning, the strangers would say, "I dreamed of light, but it came from below." And the villagers would reply, "Yes, that is her now." Because they no longer said the moon, they said her. They said it the way one speaks of a grandmother whose hands once stitched your name into cloth, the way one speaks of breath or bread or birth, not as object, as presence. And so the story turned, not toward an ending, but toward a deepening, a folding, a spiral that did not seek to climb upward anymore, but to return inward, where it had always begun, and where it now remained. It is said that the oldest truths do not echo through mountains or crack like thunder across the sky. They whisper through soil, through breath, through the spiral of a shell held up to the ear long after the sea has gone quiet. And in the village where the moon once ran, once returned, once rooted, the whisper is now everywhere, not loud, but constant. And those who have learned to hear it no longer ask what is coming. They only ask what is returning. By now, the youngest children know how to find the pulse without being taught. They walk barefoot, even in snow, not out of rebellion, but trust. They press their hands to the birch trunks, not for balance, but for connection. And when they dream, they do not wake startled. They wake slowly, as if surfacing from beneath warm water, carrying something gentle and glowing behind their ribs. The spiral is not only on the cairns or in the bread, it is on their skin, on their fingertips, their eyelids, the soft corners of their shoulders, pale birthmarks shaped like memory. They do not speak of them often, because why speak of what you carry always? One evening, during the late thaw, a child named Rooney finds something near the stream. She had gone to listen, to the water, to the ground, but what she finds is neither stone nor root. It is a small figure, carved from bone, worn smooth, not broken, not lost, left. It shows a curled shape, a woman, or perhaps the moon, arms wrapped around knees, head bowed not in fear, but in rest. She brings it to the elders. They do not gasp, they nod, and one says, "She is ready." That night, the sky opens again, not violently, but fully, cloudless, windless, vast. The stars feel closer, brighter, not new, but remembered. The moon, nearly full, rises between two ridgelines with no mist, no veil. And beneath her glow, the villagers gather. They do not sing, they breathe as one, and from the earth the hum rises once more. But this time, it forms a shape, a word, not one the tongue can hold, but the body can feel. It begins beneath the feet, climbs the spine, settles in the throat, and suddenly, without meaning to, each person begins to hum it back, not in imitation, in reply. The spiral, it seems, has found its voice, not only in the earth, but in the people. In the days that follow, language changes, not all at once, not in rules, just in rhythm. People speak slower, with pauses that carry more meaning than words. Questions are answered with silence, and no one is confused. Children stop asking, "What is that?" and begin asking, "What does it feel like?" When someone dies, and they still do, as all living things must, their body is not burned nor buried. It is wrapped and laid at the spiral's center. Because now they understand, no one leaves. They turn inward. Rooney is the first to say it aloud. She is only 10, but her voice is clear. She stands in the center of the village and says, "She does not rise to watch us anymore. She listens from within. She is not the moon. She is us." No one corrects her, because it is not a mistake. It is the oldest truth finally remembered. That spring, strange things bloom. Tiny ferns shaped like question marks. Mushrooms that hum faintly in the evenings. A tree near the ridge, whose bark forms natural runes, not made by knife, but by time. The villagers don't catalog these signs. They do not turn them into prophecy. They bow, touch, listen, and whisper, "Welcome back." A boy dreams of her, not as a light, as a face, close to his. He cannot describe her features, only that she had many, some like stone, some like women he has seen, some like the wolf. She did not speak. She breathed, and when she breathed in, he felt the spiral draw tight, and when she breathed out, it opened again. And when he woke, he cried, not from fear, from the knowing that she had been inside his breath his whole life, waiting to be heard. The spiral stone in the center of the village changes, slowly, not in shape, in depth. Its groove grows deeper each season, but no one carves it, and it does not crack. It shines, even when dry, even when snow-covered, as if the spiral is no longer a symbol, but a path, downward, inward. One morning, a new voice is heard near the ridge, not from a person, not from a creature, from the cairns, a low melodic sound, like wind moving through ribs. It rises only once a day, just before dusk. People gather to hear it, not to understand, to be near it, to hum with it. And then, as night falls, the sound fades into the soil, like steam into moss. Visitors from distant places begin to arrive more frequently. They have heard rumors, not of miracles, not of gods, but of a village where silence sings. Some come with questions. They leave with none, only spirals drawn on their hands in charcoal, a rhythm in their breath they cannot quite shake, and a new way of walking. Slower, softer, as though being watched, not from above, but from beneath. Some never leave, not because they are told to stay, because they find something they forgot they were looking for. And when they lie down beside the birch and press their palms to the ground, they feel what the villagers have known for years. She is not something to be found. She is what you remember when you stop looking. On the longest night of the year, the people gather without torches. They bring no offerings, only themselves. Bare feet, open hands. They walk the spiral path in silence, and at its center, they find not flame, not cairn, not statue, only a shallow bowl filled with water. The moon's reflection glows inside it, though the sky is cloudy, and when they lean over to look, they see her face, each one differently, each one perfectly. And they all say the same thing afterward. She looked like someone I had lost, and someone I had found. The spiral is no longer a story. It is the village. It is the body. It is the breath. It is the name that cannot be spoken, only carried. And on some nights, not always, not predictably, when the wind curls just right around the stone walls and the stars blink like eyes trying to stay open, the spiral hum rises not from the earth, not from the throat, but from the space in between. And the people remember, she is not above, she is not below, she is the space between, she is the turning. And we are the voice she left behind. The long winter is ending, but the air still carries a sharpness, the bite of ice held in reluctant retreat. Outside, the pines sway quietly, their needles catching the last fading snowflakes like whispered secrets. The village is cloaked in silence, not of absence but of deep waiting. Lamps flicker softly inside homes, their glow reaching through narrow windows like embers of old fires meant to keep stories alive. Above, the moon is thin, a fragile crescent, casting a pale line of light that barely touches the frost-covered earth. Yet despite her faintness, the world feels full, as though brimming with breath held patiently for a moment yet to come. In the heart of the village, an old woman named Era sits beside the hearth. Her hands, worn by years of spinning and weaving, cradle a small carved charm, the spiral stone passed down from those who came before her, smooth and warm even in winter's chill. Her eyes are soft pools of knowing, reflecting the faint light of the fire, the shadows dancing like echoes of memories long held. She speaks, though no one else is near, her voice a thread woven into the quiet. The song is ending. But even as she says it, her breath slows, not in fear, but in acceptance. Outside, the village gathers on the ridge, the familiar cairns rising like sentinels beneath the ancient birch. Children, parents, elders, all stand together, their feet bare against the cold earth, their hands joined in a loose circle that seems to hold the shape of the world itself. No words are spoken, no songs sung, only the sound of breath mingling with the wind. The moon rises slowly, hesitant, as if carrying the weight of all the stories she has witnessed. And as she climbs, The air seems to pulse with a deep, low hum, a vibration that moves through the stones, through the roots, through the bones of the people gathered. It is the last breath of the moon's song. Era steps forward, clutching the spiral charm. She lifts it toward the sky and whispers, "May this last breath carry all we have learned." The wind answers, carrying the whisper across the valley and into the forests beyond, where wolves watch silently beneath their own shadows. The moon's light grows softer, warmer, and then, suddenly, it fades. Not abruptly, but like a candle's flame settling to its wick. The people close their eyes, not in despair, but in trust, because they know the song was never just hers. It was theirs too, carried in every heartbeat, in every footstep on the soil, in every whispered name left in the spiral. When they open their eyes, the moon is gone. But the stars remain, brighter than before. As if to say, the light does not end. It only changes form. The cairns, now bathed in starlight, seem to glow faintly. The spiral charm pulses gently in Era's palm. A new rhythm rises, not from above, but within. The earth hums, the trees listen, and the village breathes together. In the days that follow, the people speak less. They listen more. They walk the spiral paths slowly. Their hands touch the soil softly. Their voices are quieter, deeper. A child named Lila runs to Era one morning, her eyes wide with wonder. "Is the moon still singing?" she asks. Era smiles. Her song has become the earth's breath. Lila nods, as if this answers everything. The village begins new rituals, not to honor the moon's light, but to honor the memory she leaves behind. They plant gardens in spirals. They weave baskets with circular patterns. They write stories in sand, letting the wind carry the endings away. The spiral is no longer just a symbol. It is a way of being, a path inward, a song without end. Era, though old now, walks the ridge every night. She carries no staff. She needs none. Her feet know the way. Her heart beats with the rhythm of the soil. One night, as the stars wheel overhead and the village sleeps, she kneels by the cairns. Her hands touch the frozen earth. She breathes deeply, and in that breath, she hears it. Not the moon's song, but the earth's reply. Soft, endless, and waiting. She smiles, because the story continues, not in light alone, not in chase, but in memory, in breath, in the spiral that never stops turning. And somewhere beyond the ridge, beneath the soil, beneath the roots, the wolf waits still. Not to run, not to hunt, but to walk beside the memory. Forever. The wind is barely a whisper tonight, soft as a secret held close in the heart of the forest. The pines sway gently, and the snow beneath their boughs lies undisturbed, a silent quilt of white. Smoke rises in thin curls from chimneys, mingling with the silver light of the stars that twinkle faintly through the frost-etched sky. The village is hushed, not by fear, but by reverence, for they all know this night carries the last breath of an ancient song. Beneath the surface of the earth, beneath the frost and roots, a quiet pulse throbs, steady and slow, as if the soil itself remembers all that was whispered in the moonlight long ago. The spiral, carved in stone and moss, woven into breath and bone, holds tight to its rhythm. It is the breath that holds the world. Era's cottage stands at the edge of the village, its walls worn smooth by years of weather and care. Inside, by the last dying embers of the hearth, a circle of villagers sits in silence. Their faces are calm, their hands folded, their hearts aligned with the rhythm beneath their feet. In the center, Era holds the spiral stone. It glows faintly, warmed by her touch, a beacon of memory and light. She breathes in deeply and begins to hum, a low, steady sound that grows like a tide swelling beneath a calm sea. One by one, the others join her. Their voices mingle, rising in a soft chorus that fills the room and spills out into the night. It is not a song with words, but a song of breath and being, of past and future intertwined. The spiral hum. Outside, the village gathers once more at the ridge, standing barefoot on the frozen earth. They face the birch tree, its branches bare but strong, cradling the cairns beneath like ancient guardians. The sky above is clear, the stars bright and steady, as if holding their own vigil. A hush falls over the crowd as the moon rises, a fragile crescent hanging low over the hills. Though she is small tonight, her light is full of promise, soft and gentle like a mother's touch. As she climbs higher, the earth beneath the villagers' feet begins to hum in response. The sound is deep and resonant, a voice from the roots and stones, carrying the wisdom of ages long past. Era steps forward, her eyes reflecting the moon's glow. She raises the spiral stone high and speaks, her voice steady and clear. This breath we share, she says, is not hers alone. It is ours. It is the rhythm of memory and hope, woven into the very soil beneath us. Tonight, we honor the turning, the spiral that holds us all. The villagers bow their heads, and the hum swells, wrapping around them like a warm embrace. In the distance, a lone wolf howls, its voice carrying across the valley like a prayer. The sound is not mournful, but full of strength, a call to the moon and earth alike, and the moon listens. Among the crowd, a child named Lila watches with wide eyes. She feels the hum deep in her chest, a steady pulse that matches her heartbeat. She reaches out and takes Era's hand, feeling the warmth of the stone and the wisdom it carries. Will the spiral ever end? She asks softly. Era smiles, her gaze gentle. No, she replies. It is the breath that never ceases, the path that never ends. It holds the world together, even when we cannot see it. As the night deepens, the villagers begin to sing softly, their voices rising in harmony with the earth's song. The melody is ancient and new, a spiral of sound that spirals outward, touching the trees, the hills, and the stars themselves. They sing of the moon who no longer flees, the wolf who walks beside, and the breath that binds them all. When dawn breaks, the first light of morning paints the sky in shades of rose and gold. The village is quiet but alive, the air thick with the promise of new beginnings. The spiral stone rests once more in the earth, glowing faintly beneath the birch, a silent witness to the turning of time. Era watches the sunrise, feeling the breath of the world in every ray of light. She knows the song will continue, carried in the hearts of those who listen, whispered in the wind and etched in the soil. And somewhere, beneath the roots and stones, the wolf waits. Not to run, not to chase, but to walk beside the memory, forever turning, forever breathing. The night arrives with a gentle stillness, the kind that presses softly against the skin like a cooling cloth after the heat of day. Smoke drifts lazily from the chimneys, carrying the scent of pine and wood smoke deep into the valley. The earth beneath the feet of the villagers is firm but alive, pulsing faintly with a rhythm older than time. Above, the sky is vast and clear, studded with cold, distant stars. The moon hangs low, a thin, shimmering crescent, casting a quiet light that barely stirs the shadows. This is the night the spiral whispered again. In the heart of the village, a circle of elders and children gathers near the ancient birch. They sit quietly, bare feet pressing into the earth, fingers tracing patterns in the moss-covered stones. The spiral carved into the largest rock glows softly under their touch, a living thread connecting them to those who came before. They do not speak, they only listen, because the spiral does not shout, it whispers. A young girl named Astrid leans forward, her breath visible in the cold air. She closes her eyes and lets the silence fill her, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath her palms. Then she hears it, not with her ears, not with her mind, with something deeper, a soft, low hum, like the earth breathing. A voice without words, the spiral speaking. The elders nod in understanding. They have heard it before, but never so clear. They begin to hum softly, joining Astrid in the song. It grows slowly, spreading through the circle like a gentle tide. The children's eyes shine with wonder. The adults' faces soften with peace. The village becomes one breath, one voice, one spiral. Outside the circle, the wind stirs the trees, carrying the hum into the night. The wolf, far on the ridge, listens, not with ears, with the soul. He howls once, a long, deep note that echoes across the valley. A reply. Inside the longhouse, Era feels the hum reach her even before the door opens. She stands and walks to the circle. Her hands tremble slightly as she joins the others. Together, they lift their voices higher. Not loud, not desperate, but steady, like the turning of the seasons, like the beating of a heart, like the spiral that holds the world. The moon rises slowly, casting silver light over the gathering. It does not rush. It does not fade. It stays, a silent witness to the breath that binds them. As the song fades into the night, the villagers open their eyes. They are changed, not by magic, not by miracle, but by memory, by connection, by the quiet knowing that they are part of something greater, something endless, something alive. Astrid looks up at the moon. She smiles. She whispers, "I will carry the spiral." And the spiral whispers back. In the days that follow, the village moves with a new rhythm. Hands work the soil with care. Feet tread paths that curve like waves. Voices speak softly, with pauses that carry meaning. Children learn to hum the spiral's song, and the elders teach them to listen. The spiral grows, not just in stone or earth, but in breath, in song, in the spaces between heartbeats. Visitors come, drawn by the stories of the whispered spiral. They bring questions. They find answers in silence. They leave with the rhythm in their bones. And sometimes they stay. One evening, a traveler kneels before the birch. He places a small shell in the soil. He presses his forehead to the earth, and he listens. The spiral hum rises again, softly, endlessly, and under the quiet sky, the moon watches, not alone. Beside her, the wolf walks, not chasing, not fleeing, only walking. The breath that holds the world continues. The spiral turns inward and outward. The story never ends. It only deepens. The dawn creeps softly over the ridge, spilling pale light that slips like silk through the birch branches. The village awakes slowly, the air crisp but gentle, carrying whispers of the turning seasons. Smoke curls in lazy spirals from the chimneys, rising to meet the fading stars that linger like forgotten dreams. The earth beneath the feet is neither frozen nor soft, but steady, warm with the promise of growth. The spiral stone, worn smooth by countless hands, lies nestled in moss and roots, a silent heart beating beneath the village. Today, the spiral turns again. Thyra's daughter, Elin, walks barefoot along the winding paths that weave between homes and fields. Her steps are light but deliberate, tracing arcs that seem to pull her toward the birch. In her hands, she carries a bundle of wild herbs and flowers gathered from the edges of the forest where the light filters softly through ancient boughs. She does not speak as she walks. The rhythm of the village, the whisper of the spiral beneath her feet, guides her. At the foot of the birch, the villagers have gathered, old and young, strong and weary. Some bring offerings, bowls of fresh water, bundles of grain, carved wooden spirals, and threads dyed in earth tones. Others come with empty hands but full hearts, their faces quiet with reverence. Elin approaches slowly, the wild flowers cradled gently against her chest. She kneels beside the spiral stone, laying down her offering. The herbs release a faint, sweet scent that mingles with the earth, weaving into the soft pulse beneath them. Era, leaning on a sturdy staff, steps forward to address the gathering. Her voice is soft but clear, carrying the weight of years and wisdom. The spiral is not just stone and earth, she says. It is breath and memory, connection and turning. Each of us is a part of it, carrying the song within our bones. Today, we honor the path that curves within, our journey inward as well as outward. The villagers bow their heads in agreement, the hum of understanding rising among them, like the first notes of a familiar song. As the sun climbs higher, the group begins to move. Not in haste, but in careful, flowing steps that follow the contours of the land. Their feet trace the spiral path, moving outward from the birch, weaving through fields, past streams, and beneath ancient trees. Each step is a note in the song of the earth. Children laugh softly, their voices blending with the rustle of leaves and the murmur of water. Elders smile with eyes that have seen many cycles, their hands entwined in quiet companionship. Along the path, small signs mark the journey. Stones stacked in spirals, carvings etched in bark, feathers tied to branches. These are offerings not to gods, but to memory itself, to the breath that holds the world, and the story that never ends. Elin walks alongside her mother, feeling the pulse beneath the ground deepen with each step. She presses her palm to the earth, sensing the spiral expand and contract like a living heart. At the path's end, where the river curves gently toward the sea, the villagers pause. The water glimmers in the afternoon light, a mirror reflecting sky and land in endless dance. Here, Elin releases the wildflowers into the current. They drift slowly, carried by the flow, spiraling in circles as they move toward the vast unknown. The villagers watch in silence, understanding that the river, like the spiral, is a path that both returns and journeys on. As twilight descends, the village gathers once more beneath the birch. Lanterns are lit, their warm glow casting dancing shadows on the snow-dusted ground. The spiral stone glows faintly, pulsing with the rhythm of 1,000 breaths. Era raises her hands, and the hum begins again, a soft, steady vibration that grows and swells, weaving through the crowd like a gentle tide. One by one, voices join in, singing the ancient melody without words, a song of memory and turning, of breath and earth and sky. Above, the moon rises, full and luminous. She casts silver light that spills over the birch, the stones, the faces lifted in song. Beside her, a shadow moves silently, the wolf, no longer a hunter but a guardian, walking the spiral path that binds them all. The song fades into night, but the pulse remains, a steady heartbeat beneath the earth, within the people, woven into the very fabric of the world. The spiral turns ever onward, and the story continues. The night is cool but soft, like velvet brushed across the skin. The stars hang quietly, their light steady but distant, and the moon, a perfect silver disk, rises slowly above the ridge, casting gentle shadows that stretch across the village like whispered secrets. Smoke rises in faint spirals from the chimneys, weaving through the crisp air, as if carrying the breath of the earth itself. Tonight, the village gathers again, not with words or drums, but in silence and presence. Each step taken is a note in an ancient song, each breath a thread in a tapestry woven from memory and hope. The spiral breathes. At the center of the village, the circle forms beneath the ancient birch, its limbs bare but strong against the night sky. The cairns stand sentinel, their stones cool but pulsing faintly with the rhythm of years. The people sit quietly, feet bare against the earth, hands resting lightly on their knees. Among them is a young woman named Freya, whose eyes reflect the silver light like pools of still water. She closes her eyes and listens. The air hums softly, a low vibration that moves through soil, stone, and bone. It is the spiral's voice, not loud, not urgent, but steady and true, like the beating of a heart that knows no end. Freya feels it rise through her chest, filling her lungs and reaching the tips of her fingers. She begins to hum, a gentle sound that blends with the earth's song, a melody without words, but rich with meaning. One by one, the circle joins her, their voices rising in harmony, a breath that holds the world. Outside the circle, the wind stirs, carrying the hum across the fields and forests. The wolves, far on the ridge, lift their heads and join the chorus with long, low howls that ripple through the night. The moon listens. Inside the village, the children watch with wide eyes, learning the song that lives beneath their feet. They trace spirals in the dirt, in the snow, in the steam rising from their cups. The elders smile softly, knowing that the breath of the spiral is now carried by those who will one day walk the path anew. Freya opens her eyes and speaks softly. The spiral is not a line to follow, nor a path to reach. It is breath, the turning, the holding, the returning. It carries us all. The people nod, their faces glowing in the moonlight. The night deepens, but the song does not fade. It lingers in the air, in the earth, in the hearts of those who listen. And when dawn breaks, soft and golden, the village awakens renewed, their steps lighter, their breath deeper, their memory stronger. The spiral continues, ever turning, ever breathing, ever holding the world. The morning breaks with a gentle light, pale and clear, as if the sun itself hesitates to disturb the quiet that lingers over the village. Frost melts slowly on the branches of the birch, leaving drops that shimmer like tiny stars fallen from the night. The air is filled with the soft hum of life waking, birds singing low melodies, the distant murmur of the river as it flows onward, and the quiet footsteps of villagers beginning their day. Yet beneath this calm, beneath the frost, beneath the steady earth, the spiral turns once more. In the heart of the village, Elin walks slowly toward the ancient birch tree. Her hands cradle a small bundle, a collection of stones smoothed by river and time, each carved with spirals and symbols from the old days. The weight of the stones is light, but her heart feels heavy with the gravity of memory and promise. She kneels and places the stones at the base of the tree, arranging them carefully in a widening spiral that echoes the one etched deep in the soil. Around her, the villagers gather, young and old alike, silent witnesses to this quiet ritual. Elin's voice breaks the stillness, soft yet carrying the strength of one who carries the past and the future in her hands. The spiral does not end, she says. It turns inward and outward, like breath held and released. It is the path of life, the thread of memory, the rhythm that holds us. The villagers nod, their eyes reflecting the pale morning light and the understanding that this is not merely a symbol, but a way of being. Children run through the fields nearby, their laughter ringing like a melody woven into the fabric of the day. They chase each other in circles, their feet tracing invisible spirals in the soft earth, their breath mingling with the wind. Among them, a boy named Leif pauses and looks up toward the ridge, where the birch tree stands sentinel. He feels the pulse beneath his feet, a steady beat that seems to call him home. As the day unfolds, the villagers go about their tasks with a newfound grace. The women tend to gardens, planting seeds in curved rows that follow the spiral's shape. The men work the fields, their tools moving in arcs and circles, shaping the land with care. Elders teach the young to weave baskets with coiling patterns and carve wood in spirals that echo the turning of the earth. All around, the spiral breathes in their movements, a silent rhythm that connects the past with the present. At dusk, the village gathers once more beneath the birch. Lanterns glow softly, casting flickering shadows that dance like spirits among the trees. The air is thick with the scent of pine and earth, and something older still, a promise carried on the wind. Era, her hair silver like the moonlight, steps forward. She raises her hands and begins to hum, the same deep, steady hum that has been carried through generations. A song without words, but full of meaning. One by one, others join her, their voices rising in harmony. The spiral's breath fills the night, weaving through the branches and settling over the village like a protective cloak. The moon rises high, full and luminous, bathing the gathering in gentle light. Beside her, a shadow moves, the wolf, once feared, but now revered. He walks slowly, no longer chasing, but accompanying, a guardian of memory and turning. The villagers watch in silence, their hearts full. When the song fades, Era speaks again, her voice a whisper that lingers in the air. The spiral holds us together, she says. It is the breath of the earth, the pulse of our lives, the turning that never ceases. We are part of it, as it is part of us. The villagers nod, their faces serene, their spirits calm. As the night deepens, the village settles into rest, carried by the spiral's song. Dreams are gentle and vivid, filled with light and shadow woven in endless dance. And beneath the soil, the spiral turns still, silent but alive. Days pass, seasons change, and the spiral's breath continues, weaving life and memory into one unbroken thread. The village endures, the moon returns, the wolf walks beside her, and the story turns onward. The village rests beneath a sky heavy with stars, the cold air clear enough to catch the faintest shimmer of distant fires and whispered winds. Smoke from the longhouses drifts upward in slow spirals, mingling with the crisp breath of the earth as it exhales the promise of night. The birch on the ridge stands still, its roots deep and wide, cradling the cairns that mark the passage of time and memory. The spiral carved into stone and moss pulses faintly, like a heart beating in rhythm with the breath of the world. Tonight, the spiral turns one last time. Elin, now grown and wise beyond her years, walks the path to the ridge with measured steps. Her hands carry a small bundle, woven from silver thread and soft bark, the spiral etched within its folds. Around her, the village moves quietly, each person drawn to the ancient tree as if by an unseen thread. She kneels beside the cairns, laying the bundle carefully upon the mossy earth. Her breath is steady, eyes closed in reverence. The air hums softly, a sound without words, but full of meaning. Around her, the villagers gather, their faces lit by lanterns and moonlight. Children sit at the feet of elders, learning the silent songs carried through generations. The elders themselves listen deeply, their years worn like the spirals carved into their skin. Era, frail now but steady, approaches with a staff carved from rowan. She raises her voice, not in song, but in a spoken prayer. The spiral holds the turning of all things, she says. It is the breath that carries memory, the path that binds past and future. Tonight, we honor the turning that brings us home. The people bow their heads, feeling the weight and warmth of those words. Above, the moon hangs full and bright, her light soft yet unwavering. The wolf, now a guardian rather than a shadow, moves silently among the trees, his eyes reflecting the stars. The villagers watch, their hearts open. The night deepens, and the spiral's hum grows stronger. One by one, voices rise in harmony, weaving a song without words, a breath that carries life and memory in endless turning. The song rises through the trees, across the fields, over the river, and into the vastness of the sky. As dawn nears, Elin stands and speaks softly to the gathered crowd. This spiral, this breath, is not only ours, she says. It belongs to all who have walked before us and all who will walk after. It is the turning that never ends. The people nod, their eyes shining with tears and light. The sun rises, casting golden rays over the village. The spiral stone glows faintly beneath the birch, a silent witness to the passage of time and the carrying of stories. The village breathes as one, steady, deep, and full of life. And somewhere beneath the earth, beneath the roots, the wolf waits still, not to chase or hunt, but to walk beside memory, forever turning, forever breathing,